All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. We're going to be going over every single fight from UFC Fight Night Moreno versus Albazi. And to break down all of the fights with me, my name is Thinker St. James, by the way. To break down all the fights with me, my good friend, the Ohio player, a man who knows every word of O Canada by heart, Mr. Chase Parton. How you doing, brother?
We are here another Monday. This one is actually especially good because I come into most of these shows and really enjoy the weekend before. And this one I cannot say I did. So I think I have a lot to say and I might rant. Not a rant, not a rally, but we'll see.
So to put it into a little bit of context, I saw that Mr. Chase over here put out a video recap of this event already because he had so much to say. So I watched a little bit of that. Didn't want to get every single detail into my brain before we started, but I do know that you have a lot of opinions about it. So yes, we have a lot to say about the fight night in Edmonton, which we're going to get into. If you are new to the stream, we are going to be going over every single fight on the card. That is UFC Fight Night Moreno versus Albazi. If you have anything that is not pertaining to the fights that we're talking about at the time, throw it in the chat. We'll come back to it at a later time in the stream. But before we get started on all of that, I did want to just very briefly, not to bring the vibe down too deeply, but I wanted to acknowledge at least the passing of Derek Thompson and Mike Kelly from the UFC broadcast crew. They did a very tasteful tribute to those gentlemen. So, sorry to the staff and UFC commentary team and everybody who worked with them on that loss, and also the loss of the nephew of Beeb from my chat. He's around the watch alongs often. You might see him in this chat every once in a while. Just lost his family member as well. So, sorry for your losses, everybody. Very unfortunate and terrible news there. Stay strong. But to get into the card itself now, this took place in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, at Rogers Place Arena. And I caution myself to ask this, but overall impressions, Chase, what did you think of this card?
this one, I think it was crazy to me because with such a great performance in the main event, normally that could save a card. This one I don't think did. I don't think it did it.
I know you were a little bit underwhelmed. I thought that this one was on the weaker side for sure. It was still another one that I thought had standout performances over standout fights a lot of the time, except for, of course, the main event, which was fantastic. But there were a couple of pretty good performances, and then there were a couple of odd things going on, and then there were some rather stinker fights on this one as well. So we'll get into all of them. Let's start down at the beginning. Actually, before we do that as well, let me just acknowledge this also, that this was the first UFC event to implement the new unified rules. And very happy to see that. We've been hearing about these changes for quite a while. Very glad that these came through. This is, of course, the change to the downed opponent rule, and the big one as well being the allowance now for the 12-6 elbows. So those were both good changes. We saw some implementation of that on this card, so that was kind of cool. We'll talk about those when they pop up. And the other thing that I wanted to get out of the way up front too is that Derek Lewis was supposed to be fighting Jonathan Janice on this card. That fight got canceled for still unknown reasons, it seems like, unless something's come out that I didn't see. But something to do with Derek Lewis that was not related to his weight cut, but something Derek Lewis related happened and he was not able to fight. And now Janice will be fighting Marcin Tybura at UFC 309, which is actually kind of an improvement for him because Derek Lewis was ranked number 11 and Marcin Tybura is ranked number 9. So with a win at 309 for Janice, he will be moving into the top 10. So kind of cool.
I want to make a point because I'm a conspiracy guy. I think the UFC was slowly realizing that Derek Lewis might have a really good shot of winning this fight. Why they would put Jonathan Deniz in that position where they have an up-and-coming heavyweight, and then we have these two heavyweights that we'll talk about later that are ranked. They just maybe didn't want to derail that hype train, hence why they switched the matchup, hence why there's no actual reason for Derek Lewis to pull out. And the coach actually had to, I think it was the coach or the manager, somebody came out with a statement saying that it was not related to the weight cut and that he's okay. why he didn't say anything else other than maybe we're getting people questioning, hey, is Derek Lewis okay? Hey, what's going on? Hey, he's fine. Nothing related to the weight cut. Just he's not fighting. And then now, as soon as it happened, I said, boom, Derek Lewis is going to Tampa. This is even better. But then the fact they switch up the fight is definitely got me thinking they were saving Denise. But that's just me.
Yeah, the wheels are turning in your conspiratorial mind there on that one, perhaps. Yeah, I don't know, what the reality of it is just yet. As I said, I didn't see anything coming into this that gave any more context as to what happened. I know that Derek Lewis was in the interviews earlier on. He had made that funny joke about Poontang versus Poutine. Everybody was laughing at that. Derek Lewis has arrived in Canada, and then all of a sudden, not so much. He doesn't show up to the ceremonial weigh-in. So something going on there. It did seem like a slight, perhaps, mismatch for Janice to be going up that quickly because, I mean, this is like, I think only his third
Yeah, I
fight.
was gonna say third. Yeah.
Yeah, some like second or third fight. I mean, he won his last fight, but I remember I think we talked about it. I think it was as recent as that we were already doing the show, and we'd said that like it was a good win, but I don't know if he finished. I don't think he finished that fight. So anyway, it seems like
Knowing me,
they're hot shotting him, huh?
yeah, I was gonna say, knowing me, I probably even said throw him to Derek Lewis, and it maybe even came true. Like, like you talk about hot
There you
shotting,
go.
maybe it happened.
They're
But
listening.
I don't know, man. They gotta be.
So I don't know what actually happened there. We'll keep an eye out for any more information that came out. But that turned this card into a 13 fight card instead of a 14 fight
I
card.
want
Well,
to actually make a
yeah,
point. One last point is that
sure.
Elite said, I don't see the UFC canceling a fight like that last minute. And well, do you believe that Hamzat and Nate Diaz was canceled last minute, or do you think something actually happened with that? Because Hamzat seems to believe the UFC had some strings to pull there. So
Well, yeah, that was a rather insane situation, right? With all of the dosido that was going around there with multiple different matchups being changed. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that there could be some slight merit to it, perhaps. I don't know if they'd want to rob the Canada fans I was that wasn't co-main, no, but that
that
was
was
that was
gonna
like
it
the
was yeah, the third to
third
last.
fight in. Yeah. So I mean, it was pretty high on the card. So it'd be a pretty crazy thing for them to have done that. Especially if it's announced. I doubt that they would for that reason as well. It's because, it's like you have the fight announced. Of course, it's subject to change. All cards are subject to change kind of thing. But you have it out there. You'd think that they would want to deliver on what they're offering and advertising to their constituents. But crazier things have happened.
One last thing. And you guys are, because there's three people against me now saying this is just no, it's unlikely. Like I would say it's improbable. They're clearly saving a headline. Like if they fight Derek Lewis, they don't get to sell him at a headline for early next year or whenever you want to see. If he's fighting third down, nobody's paying to see that because they don't even know he's there. The headline's fucking
But are they still trying to headline Derek Lewis?
they could. That's what I'm saying. They realized
Eh.
it when they realized how many people were on Derek Lewis' side. Like, holy shit, they actually think he's going to do it. Hold on, pull him out. We'll give him a headline next year. If Jonathan Denise knocks out Tibera, then we give him Derek Lewis. Like I'm telling you, like big brain here. Anyway,
All
we
right.
can move on to the first
This is
fight.
all wild speculation. All right. We'll find out what happened with Derek Lewis. We'll keep you posted once we get more information. But let's jump into the actuality, the boots on the ground of this card. Started off with Jamie Lynn Horth versus Ivana Petrovic. So I know that some people thought that this was a robbery, petty theft situation. Where do you come in on this, Chase? I think that this was something that you talked about in your recap video.
Well, I think I was gonna say I talked about me having a lot to say. I wanted to probably say the least about this fight because I thought it was a pretty easy fight for the judges to like judge. Like I was watching it and there was nothing in the fight. I think I remember saying the judging is gonna they're gonna remember all these oohs and ah moments from the crowd, but there's not really shit going on. Like that's what's gonna win the fight, and that's normally what I think is gonna get the hometown advantage because the crowd's going crazy when their person does something, but they don't give a fuck when the other person's whooping their ass. And I think this was an easy decision for Ivana. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I didn't see this as a I no, I mean, I don't know. Like of course I rewatch all of these fights. So in the moment on the watch along, I did give it to Petrovic. Going back, this is another good example of the same criticisms that we talked about in the Aldo versus Batista fight. There was a good amount of stalling going on, I thought, at times. Um, petty theft, perhaps. It depends on how you interpret those actions. I mean, I split decision win for Horth didn't really bother me all that much. It was one that even on the watch along when I thought that she didn't deserve it, I was like, I mean, okay, like it wasn't one where I was like pulling my hair out or anything over it. But I did want to bring up, because I did notice it in the Discord. Was there a reason that Petrovic was getting some backing? Like, I thought that there was something that I had seen where somebody was like, "Oh, throw some money behind Petrovic quickly," because like I don't know if something changed like before the fight, or if it was just how she looked coming out. Maybe I'm wrong in this.
I think I do remember them saying something about her in the Discord, but it might not have been for have any, merit behind it, because there really wasn't anything. Jamie Lynn, let's see, let's look at her last loss. I don't think it was anything crazy. I mean, Veronica Hardy, and we all kind of agreed that Veronica Hardy isn't like that great. And if it was a split
Sure.
decision, so
Hmm.
maybe that played into it. But yeah, I don't think. I do agree with what you're saying, but I can't remember for the life of me why we didn't pick the hometown girl, because we immediately went into it, and I'm pretty sure the Discord put money on Petrovic, like you said, and then we immediately said, "Well, hometown robbery, here we go," and like it was joking, like we were okay with losing the money, like it was weird. I don't know.
All right, fair enough then. Okay. Either way, close fight. It was not a one-sided affair by any stretch. I thought both of them were putting in some decent work. I think that they were both kind of at similar levels, so it was even because of that. Like, neither of them really pulled out ahead of the other one in some significant way where it was like, wow. The only real moment that I thought could have been more impactful than anything else was that Petrovic in the first round had a really nice trip. That was like when Horth was trying to angle and get her own trip, and she ended up kind of reversing it, which it was an odd situation there, because it was like on her side, like she was getting grabbed from the side and then was able to sort of judo toss her. I thought that was kind of nice, and then she had really nice armbar defense in the second round. So I mean, those are the things that kind of would have put it over to Petrovic's side. But again, all things considered, at the end of the day, I was not mad at this split decision and it going to Horth. It was just eh.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like going into it, I think I was invested. I think I said that in the predictions video. I was invested in this fight for some reason. The Discord probably talked it up for some stupid reason, and it was just like an eh. I was just ready to get on to the next one. Cody Gibson was up, So
For sure, yeah, and we'll definitely talk about that in a second. The only other thing I wanted to mention from this fight was that there was that one odd moment in the second round when Petrovic almost had a titty pop out.
oh,
Uh, the ref did not stop the action for it.
they
Question
didn't
mark
give a
as to ref was not caring. He said, "Keep going. I don't care if you're getting a nip slip situation going on there." It didn't look like it actually was in bad jeopardy of coming out, at least from the angle that we had. So, I mean, maybe the referee wasn't wrong. I don't. It was just an odd situation there for a second where she was like, "Hey, hold on," and she's kind of holding her chest there, and then the ref was like, "Nope, keep going."
You want my opinion? I mean, it was clear to me what was happening. So it was up against the cage, kind of, and
Mhm.
Ivana was questioning, "Hey, hey, hey, like something's going on." And the ref and Jamie Lynn realized she had a boy chest, so she just did not get the benefit of the doubt. So,
Yikes. All right.
mm,
I guess I mean, I guess that would be the joke, yeah, is that there's not much to pop out, right? Okay,
so
fine. Well, anyway. All right. Well, so that's pretty much it for that fight though. I mean, an okay way to start the card. At least it was competitive. I mean, it was not, because we'll talk about some fights coming up here where it's like, oh my god, why was this even anywhere near closer to the top of the card as it was. I mean, so this one at least was two-way action. I think that Beeb makes a good point that Jamie was throwing less but landing more. So I mean, to an extent, I think that Petrovic was doing pretty decently with the ground exchanges and stuff like that, defensively at least. So even enough to make this competitive, and the split decision didn't bother me. So I guess we can put a pin in that one.
I actually want to make one last note. I agree with Beeb looking at the stats. Threw less, landed more. Not landed more, but landed more compared to how much she threw. And I think that is consistent with judging that we will see later that I disagreed with on the spot. So we'll get into that. But just remember that I agree the judging was consistent, at least for these two fights.
And that's going to be one of those things that it's like it comes down to the philosophical aspect of the sport as to where you decide where you put your emphasis, because it's like it feels like we just got these new unified rule changes. I think that everybody needs to fucking go read the rules every once in a while and see what they're judging, how they're supposed to be judging, and take those things into consideration, because sometimes it's like you'll have these judges who will just count control time against the cage the same as they would count impact striking. And it's like, what's going on here? So, yeah, consistent judging perhaps, but is it correct judging? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. So moving on to one that is a little bit more palatable to an extent, at least. This is Cody Gibson versus Chad and Helliger. Of course, Cody Gibson, friend of the channel, friend of mine, and very happy to see him get the win here. But the big glaring issue with this fight that we talked about a little bit in the Discord was the unfortunate lack of a finish for Cody in this fight. So what'd you think, Chase?
I want to first make a note that I could totally see anybody who's neutral fan of Cody Gibson. They could think this was a very boring performance. Maybe not boring, but a non-exhilarating performance. I do believe Cody went for the submission one too many times, three too many times at that. I think after the second round, he should have tried to go for something different. He did go for the rear naked at one point, but I think he should have hammered that home and kept the body triangle game strong, but on the back instead of, mounting up, because he wasn't throwing the elbows like I was hoping he would. Talked about in the predictions video, he threw a couple. First to land that 12-6 legally. He wants to put a staple on it. He should have
Yes.
thrown that so many. He had 2 whole rounds where he was in a great position to do it. And we'll talk about later on the card, there was somebody who got away with a lot of illegal strikes. And I'm not saying Cody bend or break the rules, but like you had a shot to inflict the impact, but you just were choosing to try to look for that submission just one too many times. I think if you would have just taken away one of those attempts and just kind of mounted up and just rained elbows, hammer fists, whatever you want to say, like, I think that would have been the finishing job. I don't know why you weren't looking for the TKO finish kind of deal, but
Yeah, and that is a note that I had made on the watch along, was that I it was talking it through as the fight was happening, saying that like the note that I have for Cody often is that since he is such a very proficient wrestler, that sometimes he doesn't think to or remember or whatever, whatever the reasoning is, he doesn't go to his striking when he's in those wrestle heavy situations, because he's so focused on the wrestling. And it's like, a lot of times, Cody, you can just let your natural wrestling instincts kind of do that work, and then have the strikes as the back pocket thing that can be doing a lot of damage in addition to what you're doing there. Because there were a lot of times, it's like you were saying, he went back to the well, uh, maybe one too many times. Obviously, it worked for him. He was dominant this entire fight. So, I mean, that's something to note throughout all of this conversation, is this was a
100%.
completely one-sided fight for Cody. I mean, like, all 3 rounds, 30-26 easily. There was one judge that went that way. I would have thought that maybe 2 would have. But, so great performance in that regard. But it's like the determination to get the submission doesn't always need to supersede the other work that you can be doing, especially by round 3, when you're seeing that submission after submission attempt is not getting you to where you want it to go. And the other note that I had with that is that it was crazy to me that he had gotten into perfect head and arm position at least twice. You're saying it was multiple times. I mean, he wasn't on the side of the body multiple times, at least that I remember seeing. But either way, like, it was at least 2 where he was, he had the head and the arm and the body out to the side as opposed to straight down, even though we've seen a lot of straight down head and arm chokes that have been effective lately. But he was on the side to exactly where you need to get that pressure locked up completely, and still didn't get it there. So, I mean, like, that should be a signifier that, like, if these things are not working as intended, even if you're being dominant in the fight, if you still want to finish, mix in the striking a little bit more.
I think you made a great point right up front. This was a great dominant win for Cody. I'm not
Sure.
trying to downplay anything that happened there. If it were up to me and I had the choice for Cody to finish every fight, I would. And I think he could have done that. I think he could have stood in front of him. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Cody wasn't feeling the striking, but I do know what he was feeling. And it was that cardio, that gas tank about that third round after he wrestled for the two. He was starting to feel it. And what is crazy is because he's such a natural wrestler, is that his fallback is wrestling even when he's tired. So he was still able to grapple and do everything that he needed. But I wish the first 1.5 rounds, stand with him, show him that you got striking. You went to a really great decision with Brad Katona, and you were not afraid to strike with him. And I think that was important because you look like somebody who was willing to take a shot to give one. And this is the perfect person that you should have just been willing to take the shot from. And then the fallback on the wrestling in the third round was amazing because it's crazy that you still had the gas tank to do that and win the fight, even still throw up some sub attempts when you knew your arms weren't there. I think you should have just led with the striking a little longer, but win is a win.
Absolutely, and that yeah, right. I mean, that's the overarching point to all of this is that it comes from a place of love because I mean, really, we just want to see Cody get the dominant wins and be that guy. So it's the win is what matters at the end of the day, of course. It's just yeah, basically exactly what you said. I mean, like the fact that we've seen Cody in such brawls before where he's done pretty goddamn well, has held his own. I mean, like very close fights with striking involved and some massive striking at that. We know what a beast Brad Katona is. He was just in that war with Gene Matsumoto. So I mean, the elements can all work out for him if he's using them strategically throughout the course of the fight, especially when he has such a dominant advantage in it. And also, I mean, I guess that there is a point to be made that he was respecting Anheliger a little bit, maybe a little bit too much based on what we were seeing, but perhaps, you don't want to get caught yourself. So I can understand that too. And the last note based on what you were saying is that um, Cody's gas tank is something that I worry about often in his fights because he does tend to wear out towards the end of the fight. And also he sort of has that the body language that he gets worn out. Like, he almost reminds me a little bit of Pantoja, like not to that extent, but a little bit like that, where like he looks like he's breathing heavy, even though he's still got a little bit more in the tank. So, it's all of those things combine into him doing what he ended up doing, when it's like maybe there's a couple of improvements that could be made to work all of those kinks out and then just be the full on well-rounded finisher that he has the potential to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say that this is a really good time for Cody to stay bantamweight. I look at Cody's frame and I think like, gosh, it must be crazy for him to get down to 135.
He's big.
So like thinking of that, like I would love for him to, be more comfortable and not have the cut that he had, because maybe that plays a factor into his gas tank later in the fights. Maybe if he was at 145, he wouldn't have that issue. But I think right now the grappling that he has in the wrestling, that's like his base right now, is really good for where bantamweight is at. Like if he leans into his striking, I'm telling you, Cody, you got to be more confident with the striking. You can, it's not that you just have super technical boxing, and that's probably why you feel that you don't have a chance to stand with these people, but you can take shots and you can give them back and you can give wars. You'll go to the bell, and some people don't have that ability once they get into a firefight. We've seen you bloody, we've seen you beaten. Not everybody goes through that. Like you can put them in a position where they are compromised, and you gotta capitalize on that more. The farmer strength, man. The country guy, you can pull it out. Like that's really what it is.
For sure. Absolutely. And one other thing I did think was good that I heard on the commentary was, Cody is a teacher in, when he's not beating people up in the cage. And I don't think that he is teaching or what, has been teaching for the semester that leading into this camp. I think that he was fully dedicated to fighting, at least for this fight. So I think that helped a little bit as well, as far as, smoothing out the edges a little bit based on some of the stuff that we've seen in the past, some of the previous performances. So if that helps you going forward and you're still 100% committed to the game, then, perhaps there's a choice to be made there more often as to where, you're going to be putting your efforts. And if it's paying off like it has now, we got to see what the competition looks like going forward for him. But if that's a change that is bringing you success, then perhaps something to stick with.
I think when you made the point of, whatever's next for him, I think unfortunately he's gonna have this I'm thinking of a word, but Cody Gibson is probably gonna get a higher ranked opponent than he would if this was his first run in the UFC. They're
Sure.
gonna they're gonna have more expectations. Like, okay, you know what to expect. You've already had your 2, 3 unranked matchups. Now we're gonna give you 15, and if it doesn't work out for you, boo hoo kind of deal. So I'm really hopeful for Cody. Depending on the next opponent, I think he has like I said, he's very well rounded as long as he's confident in his abilities. Anybody that he's matched up against, I think there's a way for him to win. So that's very key.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hopefully that level of competition is what he ends up with. And hopefully he'll be ready for the challenge when it gets there. Cause this sport is very unforgiving that way. It's like, you go out there, you get a great win. It's like, yeah, you're on top of the world, but then the next challenge is right around the corner. So we shall see. All right. Let's move on to Sergey Side versus Garrett Armfield. I think that if there was any question about the first fight being slightly petty theft territory, slight robbery territory, this one was a little bit more clear cut in that regard. What did you think, Chase?
I think, go as we get into it right now, I think that was going to be the first point I made is like, if he got robbed in the last one, maybe this was them making up for it. But also, I don't know if you noticed, he was born in Canada, I think, or he was trains out of Canada, one or the other. He has some relations to Canada. City does.
Yeah, I
Which
believe he lives and trains in Canada. He's from from
Yeah,
Ukraine.
Ukraine. It says there.
Right.
One of the other. There's another person on the card that was either born and trained there. It's whatever.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, Machado.
yeah, so I thought it was cool that he had some connections to Canada, and maybe that probably why he got the nod in the judging. Who knows? But I don't think this was like, again, with the first fight. I mean, maybe with the first fight, I thought this was maybe more of a robbery, but I wouldn't have been mad if it went any other way. I think Garrett Armfield has been on Twitter kind of adamant that he won the fight and maybe there was something going on. City in his post fight interview agreed that he maybe lost. You don't have to do all that. You won the fight. I mean, people win and lose all the time. You don't have to make a big song and dance. You both don't have to be both sides of the argument. Like, it's not going to get overturned. Like, so just move on.
No, yeah, you're definitely right about that point. Yeah, Side doesn't need to say or do anything. I mean, he won the fight. That's the end of the story there. You can leave it right there. I mean, I think it's kind of good of him to acknowledge it if that's truly what he believes, which it looked like it was, especially when the decision was being read. His body language said, "What the fuck?" But all that being said, I mean, yeah, I would be in the camp that this was a pretty clear cut victory for Armfield personally, based on what I saw. I thought he had really nice combos. His boxing was very impressive. Heavier shots were landed on Armfield's side, like throughout. Uh, the one thing that Side did have was that anaconda in the first that he wasn't able to secure all the way. Apparently, or he just let it go. I was very surprised that he wasn't able to finish that because of how tight that looked. But then going back to Cody Gibson, who had the head and arm very tight and in the exact proper position more times than one, and wasn't able to. I guess maybe these guys are just getting better at defending at this point. Perhaps that's playing the part there. But aside from that, good takedown defense for Armfield and some nice offensive groundwork from Armfield as well. I think that it's time to start putting a little more respect on Garrett Armfield's name over here, based on this performance. Like, again, he didn't get the win, so I guess it's kind of a moot point. But like, based on all of this and the fight with Brad Katona as well, I mean, that I thought that because that was hold on
That
one
was
second.
him, I think. No.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. Brady Hyde said too. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, he lost the Heisted fight, but I mean, winning over Brad, who just had a really like crazy fight that we referenced earlier. I mean, Garrett Armfield is no slouch. So I mean, like, I think that he kind of gets, or at least in my mind, maybe I'm talking to myself here. I mean, maybe I've been wrong. Is that I kind of always sort of put him in that category of just like just any run of the mill guy, but I think that he's a little bit better than that.
I think maybe this is so when I think of judging and I look at this fight, it's like, what are they thinking? What is this person going to look like after a W? I think Sierra City after a W right here, he's got a lot a higher ceiling than what Garrett does, in my opinion. Garrett would derail the hype train of somebody who's the second tallest in the weight class, who's an absolute dog, and will put on a performance to the bell and will look for a finish up until then. If if you don't give him the judging nod, he's probably gonna not have as great of a career that we're projecting he does right now. So I don't know.
I mean, fair. Like that. Yeah, I mean, that is a case that can be made in like the big picture, but it's like again, boots on the ground. Did he win the fight or did he not? You know what I mean. So it's like,
When you get these close ones, man, you got to have some reasoning. I mean, there's like if you're watching the fight and it's like, I mean, nobody really won necessarily. It's like what other factors come into play? Something has to. They don't just write a number because they just whatever. Like I don't know. Like there's
I
got to be
guess. I mean, again, going back on the rewatch, I thought that this was a pretty clear cut victory for Armfield. So,
you
uh,
rewatched this one and still thought that Armfield
yeah, oh
won?
yeah, no, and more so
Okay.
after the rewatch. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, based on the on not only the volume of the strikes, but I mean, 'cause, the striking numbers are very close, but I mean, based on the impact of the shots, I thought that Armfield was landing better and that the combos were very very clean, very crisp. So yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is at the end of the day. And I will agree with you that I think that today's ceiling is pretty high, but I think that he needs to tighten up like in the fundamentals. That's the impression that I got. He's one of those guys that has a lot of potential, but also needs to work on the base a little bit more in order to fully express what he has the potential to become.
Yeah. And shout out Beeb for the agreement, but I just the judges have to be watching this sport out. Like they obviously know what the rankings are, who's higher than who, or like what's gonna be next for somebody if they take away a win here. That's all I'm
But
saying.
come on, we can't. But like we can't abide by that, though, right? I mean, like this has to be like then that can't be the narrative. Is that oh well, it makes more sense for this guy to win. So if it's close, he's going to get the win. It's like no, it needs to be what actually happened in the fucking fight. This is what I'm talking about with these judges reading the unified rules. Read the rules.
I listen. I agree with you. I don't make them. Like you said, read the rules. I don't make the rules. I'm just playing it how I see it.
Uh,
Sometimes they give a nod, and it just so happens the dude trains out of Canada.
all right. Well, you know what? Fair. Hey, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? All right.
Literally, I mean,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that that's what happens, but like, is the crowd gonna leave after somebody gets robbed? We don't know, but if he doesn't get robbed, they don't leave. So whatever.
Well, I am going to be firmly in the camp that is against this thinking. That it needs to be based on the merit of what actually happens in the fight. They need to be paying attention 100%. See what everybody else is seeing, kind of thing, I guess. But then again, if everybody's thinking that it's was very close, then perhaps everyone was seeing something else. I don't know.
That I think that was I said that a lot in the predictions. I had to cut it out a few more times. Like maybe I wasn't watching. Maybe I was missing stuff because this was like when I'm watching it and like I'll be like, oh yeah, he won, and then they're like, oh my god, robbery, 100%. I'm like, where was I during this fight? This
Well,
happened like 4 or 5 times during the card. I'm not gonna lie, like
no, yeah, and look, I mean, this is why the sport is interesting in general, like in a broad sense, because I mean, there are times where I do the watch longs with Vitz King, and he'll be seeing something that I didn't see, and I'll see something that he didn't see, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're watching the same fight, the interpretations are different, so I can understand it being more subjective than objective at times, but I mean, that's why these guys are supposedly the judges. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, this is the reason that they're the ones that are tasked with being the arbiters of the sport. Everybody's going to have a slightly different opinion about what they're seeing theoretically, but the judges are the ones that matter at the end of the day. So they're the ones that really need to have all of the skill set to interpret what they're seeing correctly.
what would happen if we had fan voting, like right in between rounds? Just go on Twitter, vote who you think won, and they just do a poll right there, no judging. What would happen in
Or
your
have
opinion?
that as like the third judge, only two actual judges and a fan vote for the third.
There you go. I mean, would that be beneficial or is that just, yapping?
I mean, it probably is Yap only for the sense. Well, see, no, but there, this is where it gets a little bit interesting for that part of it, because I was going to say it's Yap because you know that the people from whatever region the fight is taking place in would swing it. But if the judges are doing the same fucking thing, then I mean, I guess it's six of one, half a dozen of the other, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that third judge, he might as well be me if that's the case, you know. So I think it is interesting where will the sport go eventually? Is Dana gonna rely on AI to do everything for him? We don't know, guys. It could get funky. Just be ready for the ride.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the commissions being their own separate thing, who knows what they're going to end up doing going forward. There might be some variance there as well, but we will see. Either way, though, I thought it was a good fight overall. Though all of this talk aside, I mean, Sade versus Armfield, I thought was a pretty spirited competition between these two guys, and again, this is a whether or not it was fully deserved, today gets the win, and we'll see what he ends up getting matched up with next. I just think that if he gets a slightly higher level of competition, because that's why I had also said that I think Armfield is a dude that needs to be respected a little bit more. He's already a decent level of competition. You start putting him against some guys that are actual killers, then it could be a bad day for today if he doesn't tighten up some of those fundamental elements.
Yeah, I can kind of agree. I definitely saw holes in his game. He was slowing down, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's on his way up with a W, and I think bigger things are, better things are to come.
Sure, right on. And yeah, I see Beeb throwing some other options in there as far as judging goes. I mean, there's a lot of different versions of it that have been floated over the years. I'm actually working on a script for a video about rule changes and judging changes and stuff like that. So maybe I'll touch on some of that in there.
I was gonna say, does one and then Bellator and then PFL, do they all have different judging systems kind of deal?
As far as I know, it's all three judges. It's all pretty well similar. It's just
Okay.
that in one at least they judge full fight as opposed to round by round.
Interesting. And you like that better, I think you've said before,
Oh yeah,
or
I'm a fan of the universal rule set over the unified rule set. Yeah, that they
gotcha.
follow the universal rule set over there, and I think it's a better system in general, personally. But
Right, right. Good deal.
yeah. So anyway, all right, let's move on here. Alexander Romanov versus Rogerio Nascimento Hagerio. Um, yeah, so this starts off the big guys not doing much as far as fighting goes trend that was on this card. What did you think, sir?
I know you probably didn't see, but Mr. Alexander Romanov has been removed from the UFC.
Did he? Did they really?
They did after he won, and then we were sitting there questioning, where's Nascimento? Are you not gonna cut him also? Like that was ridiculous that you didn't cut it, because we're watching
Wow.
two heavyweights and we have quote unquote ranked. You can put italics, you can put an underline, bold caps, ranked 15 and 13. And one, you couldn't tell a difference. And two, they didn't do a goddamn thing. And the fact that the one that won 30-27 is the one that got cut, it's not like, I'm not saying why, because I knew for fact Romanov needs to be fucking cut. Hey, listen, and it's not even just because he looked bad, but clearly he's just not in it to win it anymore. Like, I've seen pictures of this dude when he joined the UFC. He was kind of jacked.
Hmm.
Like, now he looks like a slob. Maybe it was Photoshop, bro. Maybe I was, bro. Like, I'm like sitting here thinking, like, yo, did he go through like a mental lapse or something? Like, is something going on? Is the UFC is getting cut from the UFC just the beginning here? Like, bro, because they both were disgustingly fat. Like,
Yeah, they were both. Yeah, I mean, I think that both of them were like not necessarily struggling to make the weight, but close to the upper limit of heavyweight, which is like wild when you get to that point. Like, and really, you were seeing it more so in the midsection than anywhere muscle related. So, I will give you that as the criticism. That is wild, though, that Romanov got cut after a win. That you never want to see that happen. That's almost a rarity to get cut after a UD 30-27 win, across the board. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, this fight overall, I think, was just it The way that I would describe it is it was the perfect pairing of one guy who was going to do one thing just to get a victory and another guy who was not going to do anything, because Nascimento looked off in this fight, just flat out. I mean, I don't know if
You
there was
forgot the
something.
rest of that word, brother. Awful. Like, that was like, dude, he was so
But
bad. Like, wow.
yeah, I mean, he looked. I mean, like, aside from just the lack of engagement, that kind of stuff, just the way he was moving, like his body language, he just looked like he was not in this in any way, shape, or form. And so because of that, it was just a perfect opening for Romanov to smother the entire fight, wore Nascimento down, even though he probably didn't really need to be worn down. Finally a little bit of striking in the later half of the second round into the third, but by then it was just both these guys were, no one cared. They didn't care. The crowd didn't care. The viewers at home didn't care. I'm surprised that the judges even fucking were paying attention at all. Maybe they just 30-27 off of, like instinct at that point. Cause like there was nothing to pay attention to in this fight. This was a bathroom break fight if there ever was one.
I want to think that the reason Nascimento, like, I know I was the one who said, Nascimento, where's your cut? But I believe Nascimento kept his contract because time and time again, I've only seen 2 fights of him, let me be honest. But in those 2 fights, he was willing to stand and trade. Dontel Mays, he was willing to stand with him. He knocked him down, and then he began to wrestle. Once he realized he couldn't knock him out, then he began to wrestle, and he got a unanimous decision. Now, Derek Lewis, he tried to stand with Derek. They made it like 2-3 rounds, I think. 2 rounds, maybe round and a half. I don't know. Anyway, Derek Lewis ended up knocking him out. I think Dana White realized, okay, we have a heavyweight who's going to do what the casual consumer wants them to do. They're not going to get booed out of the arena if they have somebody against them that's going to stand with him as well. Romanov clearly was not going to do that. He wrestled from the jump, and it was the worst wrestling that I've ever seen because these dudes are just listen, you can't expect it to look good when the fighter themselves don't have good physiques that like work for the sport. Like if you're gonna be a slob, right? You got to be on some Kung Fu Panda like Chris Barnett stuff. That's the only way it works. You can't just be a slob for the sake of being a slob. You're gonna start getting bombed. Like, and it's bad. Like we see these guys, man, these heavyweights, we're gonna have to start cutting them. Like seriously, I even said it in the video, and I know it's wrong, and I know I don't agree with it, but maybe 10 is where the rank should cut off for heavyweight. Like seriously.
We only need it's just 10 ranked heavyweights and that's it.
Well, the last 5, I mean, like who are they? Could we actually let's pull this up right now, just because it's important. Who
Okay,
are
we
the
can do that.
last 5 ranked heavyweights? And we're gonna
Let's
need a reason
see.
to keep them. I need a reason why they should stay before I look at their names.
So,
Nascimento, I don't see
yep.
one. Delima just got flying kneed by Derek Lewis. You're gonna tell me he deserves a spot anyway. Romanov, he's gone. Tuivasa, we've been talking about for a while. Probably should
Fan
go.
favorite though.
Fan favorite though. You're right. Derek Lewis, like we just said, they just pulled him because they're going to give him his last pay-per-view or not pay-per-view spot headline, and then yeah, give him a
Wild
pay-per-view. That'd be
speculation, please. Let's
that'd
keep
be
that.
crazy. But and then Martian Tybura, he's about to get knocked out of the rankings. You know, Denise is about to take his spot, and then yeah, that cutoff right there, 11 to 15, they can go. They can seriously go anywhere they want.
All right. Well, and let me counter that with saying that I think that this fight is a prime example that whether or not what Chase is talking about with the last 5 getting dropped or whatever, there is a problem at heavyweight. We've been talking about this time and time again. I mean, I feel like we're broken records at this point, but heavyweight has a huge problem. It is a lack of talent in the pool currently, and I'm not mad at them getting rid of Romanov, like if that makes sense to make room for somebody else that's going to be coming in and doing better. But it is a fundamental lack of an actual well-rounded base of skills at heavyweight. This is a huge problem. You don't have like heavyweight guys think that they can either go out and just be knockout artists, or they can go out and do the Jailton Almeida and wrestle their way through to a victory. And it's like you need to be a mixed martial artist. I don't care what weight you're fighting at. You should be a mixed martial artist if you are in this sport, but heavyweight especially is lacking in fighters who are that. So I don't know if the fix is just to bring more people in and give them shots. We saw that with Robelis to Spain. Obviously, that didn't work out. But I mean, cycle these guys through. Have a fucking entire like the Ultimate Fighter this year should be a heavyweight competition. The fucking the next Contender Series have 5 nights of just heavyweights if that's what it takes. I don't care. Get people in that are actually skilled in this sport, not just in one area of it. That is the biggest issue that we have right now in this division.
I want to agree with you on the tough thing and the contender series thing. Hell, I'd do a whole season of contender series heavyweights. I'd be cool with it. Tough heavyweights would be great, but I disagree with wanting them to be all mixed martial artists, because what we're seeing now is that it's just, I guess it's just impossible. You got Tom Aspinall and then John Jones. Those you can classify as a well-rounded heavyweight if you want to include John Jones at the time as a heavyweight. Anybody else, you just need them to be a mixed martial artist. Any heavyweight right now, the bare minimum they have is just like super shitty boxing and they're willing to stand with somebody. Like, and that's like bare minimum you could ask for. The fact that we're asking for them to be able to grapple and do all that other stuff, I think is reaching, because it just doesn't seem fucking possible. Like we
But
can't.
Jailton Almeida does it.
These are professionals, and Jailton Almeida is the best example, other than Tom Aspinall, John Jones, as like a mixed martial artist. Cyril Gahn goes to the mat, he's toast. Like a Tibero goes to the mat, he gets subbed by Spivak. Like, oh my goodness. So I don't know. I think we're asking for a lot, but I also do agree with you. There has to be some reform with heavyweight fighters. Why are they so bad? I get there's not that many of them, but we need to go get more of them somewhere. Start breeding them. I don't know. Like, dude,
Exactly. Yeah. I don't care if you have to breed them in a lab or something. I mean, like, good Lord, we do need more. But so what do you think about Beeb's suggestion here that it needs to be 225 as the class, and that, might make some kind of difference there? Do you think that would play
uh,
any kind of part if they capped it a little bit lower?
if they went down to 225, I think they should bring it down a little bit and then do a super heavyweight. And I'm not saying a super heavyweight where we have fat people, but we have like the super tall people that are like 280 and 7 foot kind of deal, like the ex NBA players type stuff that don't make a cut. Like they get cut after about 2 years, but they're like 7 foot and then they just start getting fat. Then we fucking sign them. Super heavyweights, they can be about 300 pounds, 260 to 300. Boom. They can do
Uh,
something better. Who knows?
I think you end up in a be careful what you wish for situation with that. You end up with these guys who are going to put on the most boring fights of all time with that as the situation. But I mean, I think that there might be some merit to the idea that capping it a little bit lower, 225, maybe would breed a little bit more, at least agility, maybe a little bit more of a tank. I mean, I guess that there's some merit there, but honestly, I don't think that the weight is the issue. I think that it is a skill issue. And I know that it's harder to move around these big frames. I understand all of the elements that go into it at heavyweight, but if you're going to walk at that weight, if you're going to weigh in at that weight, you need to have the skills behind it to be able to compete in this sport. I don't think it's asking too much to have the athletes who are supposed to be representing this weight class, this division, actually go out there and represent. I mean,
Yeah.
this doesn't seem like a wild proposition to me.
This is just a bailout. I think this is just a bailout division for people to just not work out. These are people who don't want to be these are people who don't want to be 205ers, and they don't want to try to be 205ers. They want to sit and eat. Like, okay, Kevin Holland has the mindset like, I just want to be the weight that I am and eat cheeseburgers all day. That's fine, because he's relatively in decent shape. He's not a fucking slob. You're a professional athlete. You can't look like this. I don't care what weight you are. This is how the slap boxers look. This are the slap champions, whatever, power slap, whatever that shit's called. This is exactly how they look. And I bet they could do the exact same thing that you did and look maybe similar. And like, that's the problem. You should be a professional mixed martial artist. You should look like one when you step in the cage. I shouldn't question that the dude sitting next to me in the arena could maybe hop out his chair and go do the same thing. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's really the end of the story. There is, I mean, I don't know what the actual fix is aside from bringing in more people and hoping, but we're just in a very unfortunate situation with heavyweight right now, where you've got essentially two people who are dominant at the top, and the rest is just it is what it is. I mean, we're going to have to wait a little while, I guess, hope that something changes as far as new people coming in to backfill that. But for a while, just get ready for the Tom Aspinall era after 309.
Yeah, literally. I don't know. I'm not in denial of that. I know this is not the time for it, but I will say it is coming. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's move on then to uh Jack Shore versus Yusef Zalal, one of the shining examples of a standout performance on this card. What'd you think?
I thought this was an easy performance. I think Zalal got this one done easily. It didn't look like he was trying his hardest. And that does say something because Jack Shore, which I found out very late, to be honest, when I look at Wales and Welsh, I'm like, oh, he's a striker. All of them are. Jack Shore is a very like accomplished submission artist. And the fact that he was able, that Zalal was able to get a submission on him relatively easily, in my opinion, I think that shows that Zalal is like not just coming into his own, but he's there. Like he's when it comes to grappling, he's on fire. You don't want to go to the ground with him. He's like I was gonna throw out some other names, but he's in a zone right now. That's all I'll say.
Well, I mean, you're talking about the finishing sequence. You can't leave out the part where there was the huge, effortless knee that he threw that
Yeah.
set it all up. So, I mean, I think that this was a really nice display of fight IQ, knowing that Shore was going to be wrestle heavy, where he timed that perfectly because it was exactly what you wanted from a knee like that, where it was Shore going in for a takedown, and he placed it exactly where it needed to be. It looked a lot more effortless on the shot that we saw initially, but you saw that from the alternate angle, he was putting a lot of power on it. So by the time he went to the ground, it was pretty well easily locked up because he was just able to. I mean, like Shore wasn't able to do anything on the other side of it, but yeah, I mean, Zalal is a problem, bro. I mean, like he is a dude who has come back into the organization and looked phenomenal since doing so. I mean, I saw it from the very first fight that he came back in on. I believe that was the Billy Quarantillo fight. Made mincemeat out of Quarantillo, and from there has had win after win. I mean, he's got to be getting some higher ranked opponent at this point. I mean, like this is 3 finishes in a row since his return, and he's showing no signs of stopping. Looking amazing doing it.
Yeah, I was gonna say now that you say, 3 finishes in a row, which to note, he is tied for Shavkat with the most or the 3 submission finishes in a row. Um, and Yusuf Zalal is gonna have the same expectations as Cody Gibson that are gonna be higher than somebody who has just got into the UFC. So I think you're right. Higher ranked opponent is gonna come here soon, ranked specifically probably because they have been finishes, very convincing wins. And Zalal is just really on it, man. He's looking really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really all you need to say. This was a first round finish for him. First round or second round?
Second round.
Second round. My bad. Yeah. So I mean, earlier in the fight, and I mean, this is just yet another example of him just running through. So I mean, he's got to be a guy that's going to be getting some competition that reflects that pretty soon. So. All right. So I just want to quickly acknowledge Andy, Toby. See you guys in the chat. Thank you guys for stopping in. Appreciate all of the banter going on in there. You guys are hilarious. All right. Moving on, though, this is Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. This was the bantamweight debut for Charles Jourdain. What'd you think about him at bantamweight?
I thought he looked just as good as he did at featherweight. And I've been sticking by it. He's such a well-rounded fighter that it's really hard to tell what he's gonna do. I know this is like, the last win that he had, it might have been a sub. I think maybe. No, I'm trying to think because he lost to Sean Woodson before that too. So sorry, that was a while ago. But I think his last win might have been a sub. So maybe this was expected for some people. But Charles Jourdain, in my opinion, is such a well-rounded fighter. You can never gauge what he's going to do. You just got to go with the money line because he could take you to decision. He can take you into deep waters. But he also is just able to finish it however he wants, whenever he wants sometimes. And this was one of it. A fighter that has never been finished in a new weight class for him makes it look easy. Like it was just, he was just really on it. Like I really appreciate that for him.
Absolutely. I mean, if it wasn't for Jourdain's chin, I would be like riding the train like all the way to the top with him, man. I mean, uh, he looked really, really good in this fight based on all of that. I mean, it was a competitive fight though, to be fair. Through the first round, thought they were both moving really nicely and they were trading pretty nicely as well. Henry got a nice trip and was almost able to get into some good positions for a submission himself in the second round. But Jourdain is just such a veteran, such a pro. He flowed with everything. He was aware at all times of what Henry was trying to get accomplished and is so sneaky with that guillotine, man. Jesus Christ. It's like you don't see it coming, let alone his opponent. You know what I mean? It's like really he ends up getting it in such a quick fashion that it's like, oh, damn, done. You know what I mean? Like 1, 2, 3, he's already down on the ground with it. Finding these small openings and being able to capitalize on it, very impressive.
Yeah, I want to say that they didn't give him a sub attempt because for like a regular guillotine that he was trying to go for, I think he might have had it and it didn't work for him. And then there was just another moment where Victor Henry shot for a takedown, and I think he like locked in the modified guillotine where it was just right around the neck, like ninja choke style.
Yeah.
And it was too late for Victor. And once he had that cinched in, Charles Jourdain, like I don't Canada, they don't have great submission artists sometimes. Charles Jourdain is one of those who just come out here and he can really get a lot of different looks on you. And I think it's really nice for Charles Jourdain to come back and get a W with a nice new back tattoo.
Oh yeah, well, the back tattoo is something else, man. Pirates of the Caribbean all day long back there, huh?
Did you hear my new nickname? It's Charles Arg Jourdain. Like,
Oh,
come
yeah.
on. I tweeted that at him and he did not like it. That was golden though. Like that is perfect. Come on.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see if that one catches on.
God.
It might take a little while for that one, but
Mm.
I'm all right with it. One question I did have though, based on what I was saying a little bit earlier, is that do you think that going to bantamweight is going to help his chin? Because again, this is the only thing that I am concerned about with Jourdain. He's a guy who is he's a really talented guy, but he's a little chinny.
I think him being chinny is completely just recency bias that Jean Silva knocked him out, which we know Jean Silva is a tank.
Got subbed by
And
Juicy J.
he did miss weight. Remember that. So Charles Jourdain moving down in the weight class is interesting to say the least, because normally you don't see moving down. And did it work for him? Yeah. But will it in the long run? I think maybe now he's going to be more chinny than ever. Maybe he took, more of a leap and said, "Ooh, I'm more compromised," which is even weirder. Like, why would you feel more compromised at the less drained class? Doesn't that sound, backwards? So I don't know what was going through his head when he decided to make a switch. Maybe that was something he wanted to do for a while. Like, I want to challenge myself to go down a weight class. I don't know. But maybe now he's going to be more chinny than ever, facing a drained, version of himself, I guess.
Perhaps. I think that maybe some of these criticisms that I've been leveling against him might have actually been applied to Julian Rosa.
Mhm.
So maybe I was getting them mixed up in my mind, thinking that he was a little more chinny than I had originally thought. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he did get knocked out by
By a
Silva.
dude who's knocking everybody out right now.
Yeah.
So
So all right, I'll take it back. How about that? You know what?
fair,
I will.
decent.
I rescind. I rescind. All right. Leave that there. You can put that on my L's reel. Moving on though. Ayman Zahabi versus Pedro Munoz. Thought that this was a pretty decent back and forth here. It was nice to see Zahabi coming out and throwing some hands after being away for a while, seemingly just being away for whatever reason. I don't know why he doesn't fight more.
That's evidently what I'm going to come to later. Is that he just doesn't fight very often, so this does nothing for anybody. Because when will he fight? Probably next year or the year after. Who knows? So Pedro Munoz lost this fight, and I think it was not a great decision on the judging. But if we go back to the first fight of the night, threw less, landed more compared to what they threw. In this case, landed more generally. Then sure, judging was consistent. Ayman Zahabi did win this fight, whatever. But do I believe that this was an exciting affair for Ayman Zahabi to take a W onto the next chapter in his career? No, because it wasn't really impressive. He didn't really look like he was doing much, in my opinion. Throwing less, I agree. Landing more, sure, but like, was it anything that was gonna stop the fight? No. Was it just him, waiting on the back foot while Pedro Munoz was taking the fight to him? In my opinion, yes. And it was just unfortunate because Pedro Munoz is one of these dudes that I would love to see against ranked competition still. The fact that Ayman Zahabi is the option that we have to face ranked competition next, not really that fucking good of a look because this dude again is not going to fight. Maybe he's turning down fights, maybe he's got, issues going on outside of the sport. We don't know. But the fact is, he's been in the sport almost as long as Pedro Munoz, and he's had 14 fights in his career compared to 30 for Pedro Munoz. Like, I don't know. I would just love for Pedro Munoz to take that W and get more fights with competition because I think he's a more exciting fighter that deserves the competition for my sake.
Well, let me counter the argument by saying that I think that this was the right performance for a fight with Pedro Munoz, though, because this was a pretty standard Pedro Munoz performance. He's always moving forward, very jab heavy. He is bringing the fight to him. That is a fair assessment. So if you know that Pedro Munoz is going to do that, well, what do? I mean, if you want a firefight with him, then that's your choice. But you know that also Pedro Munoz is not a guy to get knocked out. It never has been. So I mean, I think that this was a pretty solid performance for Zahabi, all things considered. The hooks were nice, the kicks were nice, all very fast. You're right. He's been around for a while, so I was just happy to see because I think that Pedro Munoz now has a little bit of a narrative after, a couple more spotty areas of the record that he's just kind of getting into journeyman territory to an extent. Dude who there might be some rumblings of being on the tail end of the career, perhaps. That's his decision, of course. But it was just nice to see Zahabi coming out and still looking pretty fresh, all things considered, and fighting the fight that he needed to fight in order to win it. Got the unanimous decision. And I was pretty happy with this performance for him. I mean, Pedro Munoz's face kind of told the tale at the end there. I mean, he was pretty well bloodied up. He also attacked that mouse pretty well, and that thing busted wide open, and that was that big splotch of blood that he had on the side of the face towards the end of the fight. So I liked it. I thought that Ayman Zahabi did pretty well in this fight. I was happy with it.
I think you said something really telling. You said he did what he had to do to win the fight. It's like you can say that until he doesn't win the fight with a performance like that because this is a fight that he leaves to the judges. He's not going for a finish. He's not going to try to take him down and, control the fight. Like he's just going to sit back and potentially let the judges decide his fate. If that's what he wants to do and he's only going to fight in Canada, that's fine. Sure. But if you give him a fight and it's somewhere where the judge's not going to be on his side, he's probably not going to take a victory like that. I don't know. That's just me. I thought Pedro Munoz did a great job in that fight. Damage or not, he was doing what he had to do, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, but if you know that Pedro Munoz is not a guy that's going to be knocked out, or I mean, I guess maybe you could make a case that the confidence in the knockout might not have been there for him. So that's a criticism that I think could be valid if that is the case. But if you go into it knowing this is a guy that's not going to go down, I'm going to have to get it through volume striking. I mean, is that not a viable way to win a fight? I don't know. I mean, like if you're going for the wow factor, I think that the striking was good enough to be impressive. I don't know. I guess we're just seeing this one a little differently.
I also want to make a note that it was kind of a close knockdown. They didn't count it obviously because when you go back and watch the replay, clear as day, Zahabi is head butting Pedro Munoz every time he like dips his head. It was like he was like sweeping his like he was headbutting him in the inner thigh. It was like ridiculous. Pedro Munoz wasn't calling it because what are you going to do? You can't tell the ref something's happening that he doesn't see. It was just happening, and I'm pretty sure one or two might have been a little low, But like it was starting to piss me off because like Pedro Munoz is getting put in the position where he's fighting two people at that point. Like the ref is not helping him. So he's fighting against the rule book and then the opponent that's putting, all this pressure on him. Pressure. But like I don't know. It was this card had a lot of this was maybe the first one, maybe something earlier happened that I didn't really think of, but this one right here, I think was the start of where I was like, yo, are they gonna like say some stuff about some stuff that's happening? There wasn't much of the put the fingers away, but like there was some head clashes. Like I said, he was dipping his head and like headbutting Pedro, and it was kind of annoying.
Yeah, I maybe I didn't pick up as much on that. That also could be the stances that they were having. That can often play a part in them unintentionally clashing that way. I don't know if Zahabi was necessarily leading with his head with the intention of headbutting. Either way, that is the referee's job to be on top of. So if that's the case, then yeah, there's a point there. But I mean, I think that with that aside, this was still a pretty well-rounded performance for Zahabi. I'm surprised that you're not giving him more of a praise here.
I think it's because he looks like Ariel, and I mean, I don't know. I'm a
We
big
get to the
Pedro
bottom of
Munoz
it.
fan. Yeah, I'm a big Pedro Munoz fan, and it's like when I see somebody who I know for fact is like, this is what I want to see when they fight. Like when I see a fighter come out to the cage, I would love for them to fight like Pedro Munoz. But the judging clearly doesn't love that. Like they would love somebody who just sits back and waits for the time to punch them. Like they don't want the person who's leading the dance, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. The only other note that I had about this is that I don't know how I never put two and two together that Ayman Zahabi is the brother of Coach Faraz Zahabi. And that is a solid team to be a part of because Faraz is one of the best in the game. So just a little tidbit for you there.
Yeah, they did say that, and I was thinking like, well, of course, I was thinking, who the hell is that guy? Like, why have I never heard you guys bring up that this is the brother or like related to somebody? So I thought that was interesting that he's just randomly now related to somebody.
I just think it's because he's not in the cage very often, which is again, we don't really know why. He's talking about how he wants to be ranked in this and that. And you make a great point about the number of fights there. I mean, like, dude, if you want to be ranked, stay active. Brother, where the hell have you been?
Yeah, yeah, it's
So
actually pretty crazy.
yeah.
And yeah, so nothing really more to say. I mean, I it sucks for Pedro because he's probably on the verge of on his way out. Like that's his third loss. First time he ever took three losses in a row in his career. Fun to note. But he is going to be unranked, and who knows what's next for him at that point.
Yeah. I would think that Pedro Munoz is probably, as I said, getting into journeyman territory. So there is possible gatekeeper potential there. So I don't know if it's going to necessarily be his swan song or anything like that. But I mean, the losses add up, man, and this sport is unforgiving. So if you want to, make anything more for yourself than what that assessment would give to you, then you've got to go out there and get those wins one way or another. Be a little bit more impactful yourself. I mean, that's the other side of the coin is that, like, I mean, based on my assessment of what I saw, like, if Pedro Munoz is seeing the way that Zahabi is fighting and he is bringing the fight to him, then you've got to go that one extra step further to lay the combos on quickly and inflict the damage as opposed to getting the counter back to you all the time. Like, I mean, 3, 4, and 5 at that point as opposed to 1 and 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, all right. Well,
Let me run
that
to the
was
bathroom before we start the main card.
okay. Fair enough. When he gets back, we can talk about this lack of a fight. I mean, Mike Malott versus Trevin Giles. The only thing that I enjoyed about this was Mike Malott walked out to some 41. That made me happy. The fight itself, not so much. um, just a really point fighty fight on both sides of the equation. Hardly any combos. Talking about combos in the Pedro Munoz fight, the lack thereof from Pedro. I mean, it wasn't like he wasn't throwing combos, but like I'm saying that he needed to be throwing more volume in the combos. I mean, in this fight, like with Mike Malott, it was just like you punch, then I punch, then you punch, then I punch. I mean, like it was just like a tap fest, one way, then the other way, and I mean, really, the only thing was is that Mike Malott just did a little bit more tapping, so to speak. I mean, there's, he, he left me in a bad position here to talk about this fight by myself because there's really not all that much to discuss. This is Mike Malott coming back after that terrible shitting of the bed against Neil Magny, of course. So this win is a good win in that regard. He's not on a 2-fight losing streak now, so congratulations. But man, this does not inspire confidence.
Okay. I was listening to everything, and I do agree. He was listening to Sum 41. I believe it was Fat Lip, but I could be incorrect. And Mike Malott put on one of the most boring performances I've ever seen, followed by a post-fight speech that said, I wanted to get the finish for you guys. After we clearly watched for 15 minutes a guy who had no intention to finish a single fight. It was like he honestly, and that's the problem, I think, is because when we watch Mike Malott now, like with the, before he lost to Neil Magny, I guess people are remembering him as some world killer. And like, that's what we're waiting for Mike Malott to get back to. It's like, guys, he's very mid. He's very, very mid. He's not great. Even if he faced ranked opponents ever again, he's probably getting smoked because he's just not that good. And I hate to break it to him because like he's a cool dude. He seems nice, but like Mike, Neil Magny was your end all be all. Trevin Giles just took you to a decision and you couldn't get your rhythm at all. I wanted to make a point. I made it in the predictions video. I think Trevin Giles was doing a great job with the blocking for the high kicks. I think Mike Malott was kicking the elbow more than he would have liked, and I think that was hurting his foot. Maybe he wasn't able to establish some striking, but he was throwing the kick way throughout the fight. So maybe that didn't affect him. But I can tell you that if I would have kicked somebody's elbow, that would fucking hurt like that. Because Trevin Giles was money with it. He was aiming it and everything coming down. So that's the only thing I'll note on his end, because other than that, he didn't do anything else. It was bad.
I mean, it just looked like neither guy really wanted to engage, and Mike was just striking a little bit more. In the grand scheme of things, like landing just a slight bit more. I mean, you can see that the numbers are pretty heavy in his favor, but we're not talking about power on anything. That's why, based on what you were saying, like if he's going to go up in competition, you see this guy up against somebody who's like really going to bring the fight to him. I mean, it's going to be a bad time for Mike Malott fighting like that. It's the only thing I can think of is that maybe he was waiting for a really good counter that just wasn't there. But I mean, Giles was throwing occasionally. It's like I didn't see any grand capitalizations on the movements that were there, on the motions that were there. So it's like there was just nothing to bite on with this fight as far as anything like to hang your hat on. We were during the watch along with Vitz King. Vitz made a very good point. The fight is boring when the 5 of 5 leg kicks and 10 of 10 leg kicks is the graphic. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, I was like, yeah, that is very telling.
Yeah.
They both landed all their leg kicks, but those are low numbers, and there's nothing else to talk about. Like, I was saying that maybe they need to start throwing up stats like where they went to high school and shit. I mean, like, this was, there was just nothing to sink your teeth into with this fight. So, great for Malott to not be on a 2-fight losing streak, but you put him up against another dude at welterweight. I mean, come on. There's so many ways to get fucked up at welterweight nowadays. Like, I could just see it being a very, very bad time for him going forward.
That was the exact point I was going to make. If you look at this opponent and then Mike Malott's last opponent, and then, okay, so Trevin Giles got knocked out by Carlos Praetus. Okay. Mike Malott lost to Neil Magny. Carlos Praetus is about to go fight Neil Magny this weekend. Mike Malott just went to decision with Trevin Giles. I think I would be confident to say Carlos Praetus is going to kill Neil Magny, and that he would also murder Mike Malott on the same night. No question about it. Like,
do that and smoke a pack of cigarettes right afterwards,
He would smoke Mike Malott and, Neil Magny and Trevin Giles again for the rematch, probably in the same, like, 5-round fight. Like, this is crazy to me. Like, Mike Malott is just so unequipped right now, at least at what it's looked like. So
no, most definitely. So I mean, that's really all that I got for that fight. I like I said, I think that Mike Malott, if you are going to hang anywhere near a ranking, like, you're going to have to be okay with getting into a firefight and being able to hold your own in it. And we have not necessarily seen that from him yet, even though the wins that he does have from before the Neil Magny fight were not necessarily that. Even the ones that he finished were not necessarily that. So, I mean, it just seems like we're coasting towards a bad run for Mike Malott going forward if this is how he's going to fight. So we'll have to see who the competition is. But again, it's welterweight, man. There are so many killers. It ain't going to be good.
My last thing is
Sure, yeah.
he's gonna have to, one, not fight in Canada, because the day that he does and it's a ranked opponent, I don't want the fans to see it because I think he's gonna get fucked up. Like, and I like Mike. I'm not even trying to make it seem like I don't want Mike to tune into the podcast. Like, bro, I'm being real. Like, what I saw against a dude who's a plus 300 dog against you, it's like, if that was a close coin flip, why would I not take the other person based on that performance?
Absolutely. And yeah, and that's a good point to bring up as well. I mean, going into the Neil Magny fight, I was all aboard the Mike Malott hype train. I was like, oh, this is a guy. I mean, like, he's got the look, he's got the physique. I mean, he's Captain
Proper Mike
Canada,
Malott.
proper Mike Malott. Exactly. I mean, I think that Fitzgerald was saying on the broadcast, or whoever it was that was commentating, saying that they were, calling him Captain Canada. I'm like, that's a narrative right there. We talk about writing your own narrative in this sport. It's like Mike Malott could be a guy who's writing his own narrative here. Getting a win over Neil Magny would have been a really nice way to start off something really big for him. And then to shit the bed like he did in that fight, come out after that with a fight like this. I mean, the narrative is now being written in the wrong direction, pal. So
Yeah.
it's not that I don't like the guy. I mean, he seems like a great dude. His brother is a hockey player. I forget which team that he plays for, but I mean, that adds to it a little bit. An athletic family. Again, the story is there, but like, boots on the ground. That's always what it comes down to.
100%. It sucks that this is the performance that we got to watch. Along with a card that was very underwhelming, Mike Malott, you could have been the saving grace. All you had to do was just look a little more aggressive. You could have been the golden boy that everybody believes that you are.
It's a good point too, because a card like this, if you had come out with some banger performance, you would have been at the talk of Canada, brother.
We're about to get into it, man. Like, we're
Yeah,
about to
well,
fucking get into
oh,
it.
aren't we? I've got some words for you on this one, sir.
Fuck.
This is Marc-Andre Barriault versus Dustin Stoltzfus. And before I let you get your points out, Chase Parton, I watched your prediction video. I had a 3-leg parlay going that was a little shaky to begin with. I thought it was going to be the most locks of locks. I was like, I'm going to play it safe this week. I put Sade, I put Zalal, and I put Barriault on a 3-leg, not short money, but not huge money either, just enough to make it to make it worth my while, because it was all favorites. But I was like, this has to be 100% locks. And Barriault fighting in Canada, the backing is there. He's a low key beast, according to my buddy Chase. What happened, buddy? What? Break this thing down for me. Make me understand.
It really sucks. I really do like Marc-Andre, and I still do, because he was willing to die for your money. Think about that. I had faith in him, and he went out there and he was willing to die for my word. So I really appreciate him, but I want to give so much credit to fucking Dustin. This guy here, he gives absolutely no shits. He gives no fucks at all. He's going to go out there, it don't matter who it is, and he will stand and throw some bombs with you. And the fact that he won and landed this perfect clean hook and then gave him an extra 2 on the ground or whatever it was, like, this is how you gain respect, right?
Hell
Mike
yeah.
Malott, learn a few things. Like, I know this was the other way around, but whatever you want to say, Marc-Andre, you had my faith. You still do. I'll still believe in you. But this was, in my opinion, this was as coin flip as it gets. You got 2 dudes coming off a knockout, 2 dudes that may or may not be willing to trade with each other. We don't know. And they both were. Like, that's what was crazy. They didn't give a fuck, man. They wanted us to have a good performance. They saw the way the card was going. They said, we're going to be fight of the night. Fuck it. Here we go. We're just going to go out there. And Dustin, shout out you, man. You know how to make fans. I'll tell you that, because I'm a big fan now, especially after what you went through in the last fight. Nerve damage, facial reconstruction, whatever you want to say was going on. You didn't let that stop you, man. And that's just what this sport is about, man. Fuck, you're a beast.
For sure. And, what I wanted to say about Stoltzfus's performance is that the wrestling, of course, was great. All of the early stuff in the fight was really nice. And then the other thing that I liked a lot, was that when he was negated finally, when Barrio was able to finally get back to his feet, Stoltzfus was immediately off to the races with the striking. I mean, like it wasn't even like something that he had to think about. It was like, oh, he's back up, bang, 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 and I was like, that is exactly what you should be doing because we talk about the small motions in this sport, the small openings and the windows that you have, like. There are so many fighters that in a situation like that, especially after having gone through a sequence like he did. I mean, it was early in the fight, obviously, it was a first rounder or all that, but like the extended wrestling was, for at least a minute or so. I mean, it wasn't like he was down and then immediately back up. He was going through a good amount of exchanges to try to get him down to the ground and keep him down on the ground and all that. So, like, a lot of times when fighters get that negated, they want to reset, they try to get themselves back into, okay, now we're striking mode. He was just like, immediately, this didn't work. Now we're here. This is what I'm going to do. So I really liked that aspect of it. He switched his brain very quickly, got the very impressive KO. Stoltzfus is a beast as well. So yeah, I mean, that's there's really not too much to talk about with this fight. It was very quick and just a good use of fight IQ on Stoltzfus's part.
I think the last thing I'll say is very rarely, because when you're on the watch along and you're streaming, I don't know if you guys know this, you're not able to have like your normal reactions to things. Like I can't just sometimes I don't have a reaction that you would accept. And this fight right here is like the moment where I realize like I don't know what I'm doing. Like my hands just go on my face and I just like I'm just breathless. Like this is just a moment that just like I thought in my head this was easy. At no point did I think he's just going to be lifeless. Like that, like that's how unexpected a fight like this could be on a card like this, because by the what is this, the seventh fight, eighth night of the fight of the night, you're thinking, well, here goes another decision. He's just going to get up, he's going to eat the shots, they're going to wrestle again. Boo-hoo. But when he doesn't fire back and you just see him falling to the ground, it's like it really is a moment for this sport to be great. Like you just, man, fucking Dustin, dude, you just really know how to do it.
Well, and to that point, if you want to see a maybe more appropriate reaction or a bigger one, go watch my watch along because when my parlay busted, I was not happy.
Mm.
So that was probably the most explosive that watch along got. So go back and check that VOD out. Give it a like if you enjoy it. All right. Well, so yeah, I mean, Stoltzfus getting the job done at middleweight. I mean, he's probably got a little bit of a road to get, anywhere near a ranking, I would think, after the fight before it. But yeah, I mean, obviously showing that he's still somebody who can be somewhere in the conversation. So rack up another couple wins, my guy. Keep doing what you're doing.
I also wanted to make a note, not about this fight specifically, but just because I remembered it through this card. I did not expect the new Venom shorts design to stick past 308. I thought that was just a 308 thing. The breeze or whatever the fuck the design on the short is now, rather than like the scales. Like look at the pictures right here. Look at
Yeah,
Stolfus.
yeah, I
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
I was hoping that wasn't gonna stick because it's not a better design. I thought the Venom scales, I thought that was cool. Like I thought when it looked like a fucking snake reptile skin or whatever was really cool. But the wind or whatever design they got on it now, it's not a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it in the Discord before. I just don't really care all that much about the kit. I know a lot of people do. I'm the kind of guy that in video games, like, I'm cool with the default skin. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I'm a rarity in that department, but yeah. So I don't really have all that much of an opinion either way. Um, they seem fine to me. I mean, the custom shorts sometimes can be cool if it's a design that's specific to the fighter and has some representation of them that makes sense and looks cool. But it's rare that I've seen ones that stand out to me to the point where I'm like, wow, that's awesome. So,
Hey, I get you. Well, that
yeah,
was just another point that I'd figured I'd bring up during the
nah,
card.
fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, moving on to Ariane De Silva now. This is, of course, formerly Ariane Lipski. versus Jasmine Jasdavicius. I know that you have some opinions about some of the things that happened in this fight. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I think this fight, first I'll say that it made me question just how good Jasmine is because her striking looks really bad off rip. She did not look like how I remembered. Because, like, when I came into the fight, I'm like, oh, I remember a very well rounded female fighter. She'll come out here, she'll be able to throw some strikes, and when it gets to the grappling, she'll be able to hold her own, which I was kind of wrong about. Her striking looked very lackluster, and her grappling was a lot better than what I maybe assumed it would be. Now, that is not to say that she did not get away with maybe 12 illegal strikes to the back of the head. She was destroying the back of her head. It was ridiculous that the ref just did not give a fuck. No warning was even said. The commentary didn't even pick it up. And I thought I was like again, I'm watching the fight saying, am I seeing something different? Like, is something going on that I'm not understanding? Like, it was absolutely
Well,
ridiculous.
Felder did say something about it. I mean, he was
Okay,
saying that
okay.
you got to watch the back of the head, but I mean, he wasn't going at it like the same way that like DC sometimes does, where it's like, they got to call that, like, or like Dom Cruz would definitely
Yeah.
be like, he wouldn't be having any of that. So yeah, there were a couple of shots to the back of the head. That was the kind of big criticism of this one. As far as the striking goes, the counter to that I would posit is that De Silva's striking was just really powerful. Like she was throwing some really heavy strikes early. So it might have maybe the contrast might have been a little bit off there. That might have overshadowed Jasmine. Because I'd say that first round was pretty solidly to De Silva because of her power striking. But I mean, on the other side of that coin, back of the head shots aside, I mean, you can't necessarily take that out of the equation. But if you do put that to the side, De Silva went down way too easily off of those single legs, man. I mean, like the first one, it was like she almost just let it happen. I was really surprised when she ended up going down off of that. I mean, like that's the big note overall is that if you're going to be throwing such heavy power shots, you need to be able to stay on your feet. I mean, no two ways about it, or at least not go down that easy. I mean, like literally, it looked like Jasmine basically just took her leg and she just was like, "Oh, okay, I guess we're going down now."
I think this is a good example of just like how, not everybody's career and maybe everybody's career is going to have some ups and some downs and some plateau moments. Jasmine, I don't think this is a moment that is upwards in your trajectory. I think this was just a questioning experience that I question, like, oh, what if you would have got called for the illegal strikes? Or what if, they would have stood you up after you fucking smashed your head in 6 times? Or what if you didn't get the sub? But you did get the sub and you did finish the fight, all that aside. So you are on your way to better things. I just don't think they're as high as what we predicted they would be before you won this fight, I guess.
Sure, and that's a good point. I mean, the referee should have. I mean, the fact that there wasn't at least a warning is ridiculous. That's uncalled for, and there really should have been. I mean, I hope that referee got a talking to after the fight in some capacity because the amount of shots. Because that the problem with it is that and this is not Jasmine Jasdavicius trying to do this. This is over the course of the action that was taking place. But there was a couple of times, there were several times, I would say, that like she was getting the side of the head and then the back of the head. You know what I mean? It was like there was one that was like if she moved her head slightly, it would be the back, but then she moved it the other way and it would be to the side. So it's like I could understand there being a couple that land just in the course of the action and a couple that were legal on top of that. Felder's point was he was like, you got to find the ear, try to get to the ear, be landing on the ear as opposed to the back of the head. Because if you're holding her head in that position, you're going to be hitting the back. So it's not necessarily that like Jasdavicius was targeting the back of the head, but all of that goes out the window if the referee actually does his job, which he did not. So it is unfortunate that this was the way that it all went down in this fight, because I think that had the ref done what he should have done, and stood them up, that because the single leg was just there so often for her, because it wasn't just the one. I mean, she got that other one where she had her leg like all the way up in the air to get her on the ground. And again, De Silva just went right on down. So I mean, if it had been handled better, it could have probably still gotten to the same conclusion. But either way, the conversation is this now instead of that. So not a great look for this referee and for the Canadian Commission on this one. But a win is a win for Jazz Devicious, and she did end up getting a nice submission, all things considered.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, a win is a win. You can't argue that she did do what she had to do to win that fight. I just wish I wish she wouldn't have had to do some illegal shady stuff to do it. And I wish that her striking would have looked like she was doing more in the off season for that.
For sure, yeah. And again, I mean, like I think that De Silva's striking was the cleaner, more powerful striking in general, so it made sense that she didn't want to stand with that. But to have the illegal shots in there does just mar what otherwise could have been a very nice, clean, wrestle heavy, grapple heavy performance that ends up getting to the same conclusion. So I'm putting more of this on the referee than I am on Jasmine, because in the course of the fight, it's not, I mean, look, you have to be in control of your shots for sure. And I mean, obviously, I'm the first person to say that. I'm very critical of these fighters to make sure that they're following the rules, take the rules very seriously, as you know. That being said, it is the course of the fight. I mean, like, there are going to be motions that you can't account for. There were probably one too many to the back of the head when she knew that she was getting away with them. This is more on the referee, in my opinion. It makes this conversation annoying to have. Like, if he had just done his job, I wouldn't be having to sit here and make any kind of excuses or any of that kind of stuff. It could have just been a nice clean win. So either which way, win for Jazz Devicious. Her balls were hot, she said. So, all right, good stuff overall. And I mean, I guess that does get her, somewhere higher, I would think, after all of that. I mean, she's on a streak now. Yeah. Just put out Priscilla Cachoeira. Oh yeah, she's on a three fight win streak now, and that submission of Cachoeira was fucking nice. Oh right, that other
Yeah.
one was Fatima Klein. I don't know if that really raises her stock necessarily, just because Klein was making her debut.
Short
Even though,
notice. Yeah.
yeah,
Short
short
notice
notice.
debut.
Honestly, I think it did more for Klein than it did for her, but still a win. So I mean, a 3-fight win streak with 2 subs in there, and a unanimous decision was the other one. So
Yeah.
I guess she's something bigger and better for her coming up. And I say all of that to stall a little bit going into this next fight, because I don't really care too much to fucking talk about it. It is Caio Machado versus Brenson Ribeiro. Pretty much a repeat of the Malott fight, in my opinion. What'd you think?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I want to make a note is that before this even happened, I said, why is this the third to last fight? Why could this not have been a prelim fight? What do they think is going to happen? Maybe they know something more than me. And when the fight ended, I said, why was that the third to last fight? That could have been the first fight of the night. That could have just never happened. The Men in Black little, bro, they could have hit me with that thing, the neuralizer, bro. This fight was just so ass. Like, and it was like, one, it was ass. Two, it probably was a robbery. If I was actually to judge this fight, I do think Caio probably maybe won. But to say that anybody won this fight is saying a lot. This could have been, there needs to be a fourth category where just like they just don't give a fuck to score it. Like, that was an ass fight. Like, just leave. No draw, no win, no loss. Move on to the next one. You try again next time. Like, it doesn't even, I don't know, bro. It was bad.
Yeah, no, to your point, I'm always, yeah, I'm a negative person most of the time in general, right? I'm kind of a pessimist. I'm a little bit of a downer of a person in my day-to-day existence, but I always try to keep a little bit of hope coming into these fights. So when I heard your assessment, and which is not just you, I mean, I've heard this elsewhere as well. Why is this fight so high up? Who are these guys? What is this going to be? Is there a rationale for this being where it is on the card? I was like, maybe this is going to be the one that's going to be some very entertaining one that no one is seeing coming, and I was really holding out hope that was going to be the case. And boy, was I let down in that hope, because you are absolutely correct. Yeah, the ass fights category needs to be created, and this can be its first inductee right here. What I will say, if there is any positives to be said, is that both guys had their moments of throwing decently heavy shots, but they were both, again, going back to the Malott assessment, they were both too apprehensive about getting into range for anything to really be effective. Brendan Fitzgerald summed this thing up perfectly on commentary when he was talking about the live odds. I think DC had asked him what the live odds were, or something like that. And he had said the live odds have it as a coin flip because no one has gone out and grabbed it. I thought that that was a perfect assessment of this. Neither guy was going out there to win the fight. They both were in very even footing for all of it because while there were some heavy exchanges, they weren't actually landing much because neither guy wanted to get close enough to fucking do it.
Yeah, this looked like two dudes that 100% did not know how to box or kickbox. Like they were just throwing shit out there. And okay, light heavyweight, this is what you're going to get sometimes, but that can't be the entire game. You can't be the two barroom brawlers who can't get in range to strike. Like dirty boxing only works when you're in close. Like it was just like there was nothing going on. It was so bad to see it. And then especially that we had a robbery for the dude who didn't even land 50 strikes. Like, I mean, fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Split decision win for Hibero. Like, all right, I guess. I mean, I had thrown a little bit of money on the dog just because he was the dog, and my parlay had busted earlier. So I was like, let me just see if I can get any kind of action out of this thing. So I was like, all right. I mean, I'll take the cash, but a little bit odd. And yeah, I mean, I'm really struggling to think about any other mentionable stuff. The only other thing that I remember from this fight that was noteworthy, like what you were saying about like the range element of it, is that like at times they were both swinging pretty heavy wild shots, which it's like if you were close, that could have been something. But it's like if you're not going to set it up in a way that like you're not shuffling in, you're not doing any kind of fast forward motions, really, you're throwing at such distance that it's like it reminds me in like a kung fu movie when they're just first getting ready to fight and they're both like going through their move set, like at range from each other. I mean, that's like, dude, I mean, like, what are you expecting to achieve with any of that? So that's really the full on assessment of this fight. You got anything else?
Yeah, no, this one was bad. And it's unfortunate because I maybe will say more about this fight than the next one.
Oh,
So,
well, all right. And let's get into it here in a second. But I before we move on from this fight, I did have one note that had to be said. After the win for Hibero, his cornerman dumped a large amount of water over his head. The water that he dumped over his head left a very large and very noticeable puddle on the mat. This will come into play later on down the line here. So keep the puddle in mind. The puddle of
I'm
doom, I was calling it.
I'm glad you noticed what happened because when we'll talk about it, I was sitting here questioning what the fuck happened. How did we end up here? And somebody said, I think Rose did something in her pregame. And I was thinking, you know what, this dumb bitch, what did she do to create this problem? But wasn't her. If it was the coach of Ribeiro, wow, he was a goofball because this fucked some shit up for some people. So
Serious goofball moment for sure. And shout out to Andy, who was in the chat a little bit earlier, because he is one of the funniest people on the watch alongs all the time. Love having him in the chat. And he was, anytime that they were even close to the puddle, he was making sure to let everybody know, oh, they're getting close to the puddle. She's in the puddle. She's in the puddle now. So
yeah.
it was making for a lot of entertainment where there not necessarily was all that much otherwise. So definitely something to keep in mind was the puddle.
Yes.
So just have that in the back of your mind as we move on to Aaron Blanchfield versus Rose Namajunas. Shout out to Anakin in the chat, by the way. See you, brother. What's up?
So I want to say that this fight, speaking of the puddle first, I don't think the puddle was an issue with this one. The next fight we will talk about, the puddle, I believe, was 100% a glaring issue. But Blanchfield and Rose, holy shit. I was feeling the women's MMA hate for this fight. Like I could feel it burning into my brain because Aaron Blanchfield looked so fucking bad. Like her striking did not look good. It made me think like and when she won the fight, I thought to myself, maybe she's so good that she could look bad and come away with W's because nothing about her performance made me think this is somebody that needs to be facing really high competition. This is somebody who maybe could fight for the belt. It was just, and maybe I'm a hater, man. Maybe by the time this card was coming around, maybe I was watching something different because I had a lens based on fights that I wasn't enjoying for the entire time. But once again, Rose put on a performance that I could have maybe expected on a once-off day because, she's wishy-washy. I can maybe call it coin flip type of thing. And she didn't bring her A game, let Blanchfield, who had a worse performance against Manon, beat her up and steal a victory. And I think steal is probably the better word for it because it was kind of close, even though there wasn't much that I think was a deciding factor.
So, to the point that you made, if you ever on the watch along hear me and Vitz King talking about the London card, that is exactly what happened to us on the London card because it was such a terrible card earlier on that there were probably a couple of fights that weren't as bad as we were making them out to be, but just we were worn down by the time that the decent fights were coming around. Because I actually liked this fight. I thought that it was pretty okay. I mean, I can understand the criticisms that you're putting out there on this one to an extent, but I don't really see it as like polarizing in the way that you're describing it. So there is some point to be made that, like, especially coming off of the fight before it, that it's just like, why am I still even watching MMA at this point? I could be, there's so many things he could be doing on a Saturday night, and I'm sitting here watching this. So I get that aspect of it, but I thought that through the first two, Rose looked pretty solid. Her striking was there. And most importantly, the takedown defense was there because, of course, you know that's what Blanchfield is going to want to do. She's going to want to try to get her to the ground. She was trying, wasn't having success there early on. Rose even got a really nice trip to reverse the takedown in the second, which was all nice work. So, I mean, the Rose of old, so to speak, was somewhat there. She didn't look like 100% herself, but like it was still within the wheelhouse of the performance that you would expect from Rose. Um, I think that she might have been getting a little bit gassed a little early, which is odd. I don't really always have Rose as a fighter that gasses out quickly. Maybe this is just the perception that I have because she does sort of have that slack jawed kind of body language. She keeps her mouth kind of open, so maybe it looked like she was breathing heavier than she was, but it looked to me a little bit like she was wearing somewhat early in the fight. That could just be my perception of it. Either way, by the third round, Blanchfield had finally lit the fire under her ass. Gets the takedown and the doesn't let Rose kick and roll through to get back up, which I thought was really nice and like high level. So I mean, there's a point in her direction, even if her striking was not as good. Erin's ground game is her biggest skill set, so I thought all of that was very nice. And then round 4 is, of course, the round that I think is most in contention. I'd seen a lot of discussion about round 4 online, and that might have been the round that would have gone to Rose. But I thought that she was throwing a good amount, but not landing much. And Blanchfield actually did land in the 4th round. So, round 5 was solidly to Blanchfield. I think 3-2 Erin made sense. I was okay with this fight.
I I think I'm okay with the scoring of it. I don't agree that Rose won. I just wish Aaron would have looked better doing
More
it.
dominant. Yeah, I get you. I get you on that. Yeah, the dominance was certainly not showing through. And your point about her being someone that had for a while been touted as a possible title challenger, a possible contender to be holding the belt. This is not the performance that you necessarily want to see out of a champion. So I can jive with that for sure. But I do think she did enough to win the fight. And going forward, I mean, I think that could potentially set her up to get back into that conversation. And then we got to just see what she does when she's up against somebody who's going to be not Rose under the current set of circumstances that Rose has going on or surrounding her. I have my thing with Rose, and I've probably talked about this on the show before, but Rose is a very cerebral fighter, not in a good way. She is in her own head a lot. There are times when you don't know where her head's going to be at. She will be either 100% locked in, fully focused, or she could be, to put it politely, in her feelings a little bit. She's very emotional. So you never really fully know what you're getting with Rose. And I definitely want to bring up the point that Anakin is making in the chat now, is that Rose going away from Trevor Whitman seems to be one of the worst things that she ever could have done. If you're going away from Trevor Whitman to train pretty much exclusively with Pat fucking Barry, that is look, marriage aside or not. And of course there's a whole lot that we can talk about with Pat Barry and all of that aspect of it. We can leave that to the side for now. But the point is that if this is the camp that she's training with, and this is the training that she's getting, Pat was very loud during this fight. You could hear a lot of the coaching he was giving. This is not the camp that you want. This is not the cornering that you want. I mean, going away from Trevor Whitman, who, in his time at least, I mean, back when Rose was champion and Justin Gaethje was doing his thing, he was one of the best in the game then. So I mean, like, to go away from that to having Pat as your main guy, like, again, put your marriage to the side and look at it objectively. This is a bad decision on your part.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel bad because I'm in some group chats and there are some pretty big Rose Namajunas fans in there. If you've ever been on Twitter, you know her brother is also on Twitter, Nomas.
Yes.
And like it seems like a lot of people have confidence that Rose can be or will be eventually the title holder again. But like you can't keep having these one-off performances where you just throw away a win. Like if you want to believe that she went up 2-0 or whatever, how did you just manage to lose the last three? Like you gotta not let that happen. And two, you gotta stop letting it happen right now. Like you're only getting older. Like you can't have your most recent bout be the one where you fucked up and had a mental lapse. It's got to be the one at the beginning of your career where you learn. So I don't know, Rose. I just feel bad because a lot of people do have faith that you're still on your way to something great, and I'm just not seeing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there also is a case to be made at this point. I mean, Rose is not like necessarily like on the backslide of her, or the tail end of her career, I should say. She's not necessarily on the back nine, but I mean, you're thinking about Rose. I would be talking to some of these people who still have a lot of faith in her. You're thinking of Rose as the same person who dominated Joanna Jędrzejczyk. You're thinking about Rose as the head kick against John Waylay. I don't know if this is the same Rose, and again, I don't mean to harp on it, but if this is the coaching that she's getting, then I don't know if that Rose really exists anymore. I think that there needs to be a hard pivot, and she needs to make a decision as to whether or not she wants to still be the Rose of old and get back to that point, or if it's time for her to, maybe think about something else. I mean, I'm not saying that she's even necessarily in the position that she needs to retire. She could still go out there and be some relative version of her old self, but the factors, the elements that go into that just aren't there for her right now. She doesn't seem like she wants them to be there based on her going away from the team that she was with. And if that's the case, then I mean, I just don't want to see Rose going out there and getting dominated time and time again, because again, she's already a little bit mentally fragile to begin with. And I think that a long losing streak would be very bad for her psychologically.
Yeah, I mean, but like I with these people who are, on off, they have the switch that they can flip. This is just what Rose has become. She's gonna lose, and then she'll just come back with great motivation, and she'll win, and then she'll build up hope for all the fan base, and then she'll be comfortable, and then she'll lose again, and that's just what I see happening. I mean, if she continue, I saw it in the chat earlier. Rose needs to retire or whatever, but I mean, she's 14-7, and this is like one of the goats of women's MMA and in totality, I guess. Somewhere along the line, she's up there, and it just sucks to see.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think that there is potential for Rose to be getting into gatekeeper territory if she continues down the path that she's going. Um, I mean, that would be unfortunate to see her, go from being a champ to that. But it is a possibility if that's what she wants. I don't think that that's what she wants. I don't think that her mental game is going to be good for that type of trajectory going forward. And again, I don't mean to be like, I'm not saying any of this to be mean. Trust me, I take the mental health stuff very seriously. I'm not trying to make light of it or anything like that. I'm looking at it based on what I'm seeing from Rose and have seen from Rose. This is still the same person who was very, very shooken up by the Connor Dolly incident. I mean, like, and again, I'm not trying to meme on her. It's a lineage and pattern of what she has presented over her time in the sport, and I think it plays a factor. So her getting into a long losing streak, if that's what it ends up being. Now, I mean, like you're saying, could it be another one? She flips the switch and comes back. I mean, even that's going to get you eventually into gatekeeper territory because you're going to be on against somebody, you're going to be off against somebody. The ones who you let through are going to get through, and you just sort of middle. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't think that any of that bodes well for the type of person that Rose is. So I do think that she needs to make a decision as to how she wants to conduct herself going forward for her own sake. You know, I mean, not for, fuck the fans, for herself. You know.
Yeah, and back when I used to watch her, not watch her, but like watch the Ariel Hawani show, like she was on there and she was talking about how she just, I don't know, she just doesn't seem like she comes off as somebody who's that confident in her abilities, which you need to have confidence to become a champion. If that's what if that's what your goals are, if your goals are just to be middle of the road, you don't need that much confidence. The skills will get you there. Confidence, heart, determination, whatever you want to say, you're going to need to carry those with you into every fight if you're wanting higher than where you're at right now.
Yeah, and she's also in a weird position with Pat. You know, I mean, look, it's there's really not too much that you can do about that, right? Because it's like that's her husband. So if this is the decision that she's made, short of them breaking up, which I'm not going to put that out into the ether. That's their personal life. They can do whatever they want, but it puts her in a weird position. She leaves her gym to go train with Pat, more exclusively, and this is the path that Pat is leading her down. You're in a bit of a bind there. So again, these are the hard decisions that you have to make based on where you want to be in your career. We just have to see what she ends up deciding to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So all right, well that's that. Moving on to the main event of the evening: Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi, saving this otherwise somewhat lackluster card. What did you think about this fight?
I thought Moreno looked amazing. Okay, maybe amazing is saying a lot. He looked really, really good against a person who's not throwing punches back at him, which Amir Albazi was not doing the best job of landing strikes. I do see that he was throwing them. I will give him credit. I do see that he threw 236 strikes. The fact that he only landed 63 is not that great because he just wasn't, I don't know, something was off, shooken up, I guess. And that's the only thing you can say because this just didn't look like a performance that you just didn't perform well, rather than you just didn't perform at all. You didn't have a game plan that you were able to enforce. You didn't defend the way that you were supposed to. I don't know what you thought. Like Moreno's been around for a while. You got plenty of tape on him. He didn't try to sub you. He just stood with you like he does with all of his fucking fight, like all of his opponents. So Amir Albazi, for you to be so off guard doesn't make sense. You you just must have been, in the wrong headspace. And they did talk about before the fight, last year, a doctor was telling Amir Albazi that he was like one fight away from being paralyzed or something like that. Maybe it played a part. Maybe he was, worried to get into a situation where maybe he's going to have to think, do I want to be paralyzed or do I want to fight? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good point to bring up. Albazi is coming off of an injury and surgery. The layoff was a little bit long for him. Moreno coming off of a self-imposed, semi-retirement. I'm so sick of fighters retiring and then unretiring. I don't. There needs to be another word for it than retirement. Retirement is
Layoff.
yeah, exactly. There you go. Layoff is a fine way to put it. It's just I'm not happy with the idea. It's like that I'm retiring. Retirement is like should be for good, but regardless. So he's coming off of a layoff. That's a fine way to put it. Yeah.
I was gonna say is where was it? Oh yeah, Anakin said, props for showing up against the dangerous Moreno. I don't want to give him props because we didn't know that Moreno was gonna be just as dangerous as he was before he left. Because like we said, he's been retired, and he came in and he looked like he had never left. We realized just how dangerous Moreno still is because of that performance.
Yeah,
And
that was going to be the point that I was going to
yeah,
make as well. Is just that I mean, Moreno with the self-imposed nature of it is like where's his head at? I mean, what are the factors that go into wanting to take the time off in the first place? He came back just as good as he left. I mean, it was a swag fest through and through. Albazi, the circumstances were a lot different. How that factored in, who knows? But what we ended up seeing kind of tells the tale in and of itself.
Yeah, and also to note, Brandon Moreno isn't just out there doing whatever. He is a commentator still with the UFC. He's one of the Spanish commentators, so maybe he was just taking some time off, enjoying what he had to do. UFC No Shade just passed. Maybe he was a commentator during that. We don't even, do we know?
I think
I
he
don't
was
know.
actually. Now that you say
Okay.
that, I'm pretty sure that he was.
So, maybe he was just taking some time, not necessarily perfecting his craft, because as we see, the craft is still there. All he has to do is just find somebody for it to be applicable for. And I think, Anakin made a great point with Kaya France next, but I think I want to see the Roy Val rematch. After what I've seen for their two recent performances from Roy Val and Moreno, they got to run it back right now, because I'm very confident that Roy Val's, his takedown defense and his grappling defense is going to be so good that when it gets to the ground, we're going to have amazing scrambles between Moreno and him. And then when it gets to the feet, look at what Moreno just did. 317 strikes. Roy Val was doing the same thing, and arguably he had 2 rounds off because he was wrestle fucked the entire time. I would love to see a 700 strike matchup between these two. Like, that's very possible. It's going to go to decision. They're going to throw to the fan, and this would be amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't see any problem with it. In this fight, Moreno was on fire, I would say. I mean, like you're saying that it was based on Albazi not throwing back. I think it was just because he was so goddamn fast that Albazi was having trouble timing his shots earlier, and then it just got away from him. I mean, that's the assessment that I had, because I mean, based on the watch that we had, you could give Albazi the first round because it was a feel out. But after that, it was just off to the races. Moreno got his footing. And the other thing that I had said on the watch long is that Moreno is so comfortable at this point in a 5-round fight that having the first round to download the information is perfectly acceptable when he's going to do what he did in those following 4. So, I mean, from the time that the second round started all the way to the finish, every metric he was wrecking shop. I mean, the speed is what really gets me, man. I mean, like, we talk about this with flyweights all the time, but like he really is that high level flyweight that is the prototype of what you want in that regard. Now, you're talking about the Roy Val rematch, though. I think that the wrestling does play a lot more of a factor there. The defensive grappling is going to have to be really, really on point, because after seeing what happened in the Tyra fight, we know that Roy Val can really hold his own there, and that Moreno has. I mean, he's not necessarily been like fully negated all the time, but he has struggled. I mean, this is why Pantoja is still holding the belt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, that's actually a good point, is Pantoja does hold the belt right now. He's also going up against a very hungry and decorated champion from another promotion. Will he be the champion by the time that this gets very interesting with, rematches maybe between Roy Val and Moreno? Or if we get, like Anakin just said, if Asu comes climbing up the rankings, we don't really know. It could get very interesting. I too like Almabayev, so we'll see.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about this plenty of times that flyweight and bantamweight are so dangerously active right now with some of these guys who are really making names for themselves, coming out here putting on banger performances. I think that there's really anything can happen kind of territory going on, which is why the lower weight classes are the most exciting right now. So there's potential for a whole bunch of guys to be in that equation as they work their way farther up and people start, shaking out and changing positions in the rankings.
100%.
Um, the one thing I wanted to say about Moreno too is that Brandon Moreno is a great example of how you don't necessarily always have to look the part in this sport. I mean, this guy, baby faced assassin, right? I mean, that's his nickname. He lives up to that. He's not exactly a physical specimen either. I mean, he's not super cut or anything like that. But you see this guy laying hands the way that he does with the volume that he does. He uses his speed so effectively that it's like, if you're a smaller guy, I would be looking up to Brandon Moreno as like, man, maybe I could do this too.
Yeah, I agree, and I actually forgot to bring it up earlier with Jack Shore. It's like, some of these dudes show up and they don't have abs, and sometimes you don't need abs. You could be a little pudgy, but you got to be good if that's the case. I talk about with the heavyweights and the light heavyweights. It's like, if you're gonna be that slob, you got to be impressively slobbish. Like, you can't just be disgusting. So
Right. Yeah. Physique does not equal power. Physique does not equal skill.
yeah.
But before we close this out, I think that Anakin's making a good point here. What are we thinking about this Kai Asakura? I mean, he's coming into the organization. This is his first fight in the UFC, champion in Ryzen, coming over, getting an immediate title shot. I mean, of course, I think it goes without saying that he will shake up the division if he wins the fight. But even if he doesn't win the fight, what does it? What can we expect? What do we think is going to happen with all this? I guess it's kind of hard to tell right now.
I unfortunately don't have much hope for him. I think the exact same thing will happen to him as most of Pantoja's opponents, and he will maul him. Like, he's gonna do what Pantoja does. I don't care the age. Kai Asakura is he's just another guy from another promotion. I don't care how many followers he has. This is the UFC. This is the top promotion. We see it all the time. Michael Chandler, good example.
Kayla,
So, you
Kayla's
know,
at least winning, but you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, well, Kayla too, So I think Pantoja I think he's gonna do what he always does. He's been training, and with his game and with his mindset, it's like you're only training to stay in shape at this point. You know what you gotta do, kind of deal.
Sure thing. So yeah, I guess we'll close it out with that. And to cap it off, I will highlight Beeb saying, happy 17th birthday, Brendan Moreno. All right, so that is UFC Fight Night Moreno versus Albazi. Talking it through. Did your opinion change at all, Chase?
Oh, no, I think it made me realize, like, how brutal that night actually was. And I was trying to give a little benefit of the doubt. Maybe I was in a bad mood, but I still think even enjoying what I talked about today, it wasn't it.
Fair enough. I think that I am also in that same camp. But before we close it all out, let's take a quick look at next week. We've got UFC Fight Night Magny versus Prates. We talked about that a little bit. You thinking that this is just going to be a
He smoked him.
100% fucking smoke fest, huh?
Yeah, he's fucking smoking him. Like, come on, god damn it. I mean, if in your heart of heart you are expecting something different, I think you're just a liar. There's nobody out there that is like a diehard Neo Magni. He can do this fan. Even his family members got to understand, like, this is a paycheck. Like, he's just going to work kind of deal. Like, he's not the greatest fighter of all time. He's not, like, they just know, like, all right, dad's going to work. He'll be home later. Win or loss, it don't matter at this point. But I think he's
Yeah,
going to lose.
I mean, I think with Neil Magny, there have been times where he has derailed a hype train or two. So it's like, you understand why he has the gatekeeper status that he does. However, after the loss to Michael Morales, which was just honestly a little bit demoralizing. I mean, his body language after that loss was pretty bad.
Well,
I
even
think,
Ian Gary
yeah.
embarrassed him,
Oh,
like,
good Lord.
for
Yeah.
3 rounds. I mean, and just because Ian Gary didn't finish him, we don't look back at that as like an embarrassing, demoralizing loss or whatever. Like,
One of the
Ian
rare 30-25s, I should add, that I've seen.
That's actually crazy, but
That's
yeah,
wild.
and I mean, it wasn't even just like the fight itself; it was all the antics going around behind the scenes, and the press conference, and so Neil Magny, I think maybe we overhyped the gatekeeper status, like you said, he's done it once or twice, but the people that are really the real deal, Ian Gary, Carlos Prates probably up next, Michael Morales, they're going to get that shit done. They're not slouches. The next wave is on the way.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, these odds say it all. I mean, a minus 850. It's surprising to me that it's not even higher, honestly, based on some
Yeah.
of those ones that we've been talking about, betflation, with these odds being wildly one-sided in the past for certain fights. I would have suspected this to be one of those, but yeah, I mean, I think that this is pretty well in the bag for Prates. All right, moving on. Your boy Miles Johns fighting. I know you're a huge fan of Miles Johns.
Yeah, I like Miles Johns. Too bad he's fighting Cody Garbrandt. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I don't think Miles Johns is going to win this one. I think Cody Garbrandt probably should win this one, ex-champion, whatever you want to say. The skills are all there, but Miles Johns, decision merchant, I mean,
I
like,
was gonna say I was being sarcastic. I thought you did. I thought you hated that guy.
yeah, he's fine. Like, I don't dislike him. Yeah, like decision merchant. I think he lost his last fight probably, and he didn't do too much. He probably put me to sleep in his last fight, probably. Against what's his face? I'm trying to think of some Brazilian guy, but either way, I think Cody will win this one. Yeah, Cody should via schizophrenia. Yeah, there we go. Exactly.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a good dog. Cody's been looking better. I mean, I don't think that you can necessarily judge him off of the loss to Figueiredo because Figueiredo is such a beast.
And he
So
had vertigo.
well, oh, right, of course, the vertigo. Yes, that plays a huge part, of course. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that Cody has potential to win this fight. I actually think it's a good matchup for him, all things considered, because he will be able to get his striking off if he wants to. I mean, he's just got to be careful about getting clinched up and stuff like that. But it will be a fight that he could spread his wings if he wants to go out there and do it. If he wants to be the schizophrenic Cody, then there's potential for that.
This is actually a better matchup for Cody entering the bantamweight division. Going into bantamweight, he picks out Figueiredo or like, in the bantamweight. Well, he's been at bantamweight for a little bit, hadn't he? Or he
I
moved
think
up.
they're no, that was Figueiredo's bantamweight debut.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, never mind. I was gonna say this is a better representation rather than Figueiredo, who's a 25er. But Miles Johns might look a lot stockier than Cody Garbrandt, I think.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably an accurate assessment. He's kind of got that broader build, so that might be a little bit of a problem for him. But if he can negate that and let his hands go, I think that there's potential for him to win.
Yeah.
All right. Carolina Kowalkiewicz is coming back in against Denise Gomes. I mean, I think that should be a win for Gomes. I mean, I like Kowalkiewicz has been so spotty that I would expect that Gomes can win that one. But I mean, maybe Kowalkiewicz has something left in the tank. I don't know. It's a little bit high up on the card, honestly. I don't know why that's
Yeah.
so. Just I guess just because Carolina's been around for a while.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that one. We'll see.
Ricky Tercios back against Sopai. I actually like that fight.
I do too. It makes me question though, where is Vinicius Oliveira though?
Mm.
Where's his matchup? Why is why is the dude that you flying need getting the fight before you, even though I think Vinicius fought an additional time after that. But Vinicius, you should be having a fight lined up here soon. Sopaj, I kind of think I was interested in his game, like even up until the knockout. I think I was thinking Sopaj is kind of nice, like, but I could
Yeah,
be wrong.
he was on a 3-fight win streak before that, all KOs, but they're outside of the UFC. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I mean, I like that fight. Ricky Tercios has a lot of ground to regain as far as his fandom goes, in my opinion. Ricky Tercios was a guy who was on The Ultimate Fighter, and I watched his entire season of that. And I liked him on The Ultimate Fighter. I thought he had a good mindset. He's one of these guys that takes the game very seriously. He's very committed to his training. I thought he conducted himself like an absolute ass against Raul Rosas Jr. So you need to go out there and regain my confidence, dude, not only in the victory, but also just, in the way that you carry yourself, because I thought that you kind of made a bit of an ass of yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
We got GM3 fighting again. Oh man, don't you love to see a GM3 fight? I do.
Yeah, he's fighting a guy. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, GM3 submission. It's always a lock." The dude that he's fighting has never been subbed and he's subbed like 12 people. So
Well, this is actually a good point to bring up. So this is Gerald Meerschaert versus Rainier de Ritter. De Ritter is a champion from One, coming over, making his debut in the UFC. So this is an interesting thing. We were just talking about Kai Asakura coming over from Ryzen, and now De Ritter coming over from One, another promotion one of their high level guys coming over. It's going to be interesting to see what he's able to do against Mearshart, who is one of those guys we talk about it time and time again with the Gerald Mearshart fight, who just somehow, it's amazing to me. It's like every time that you count out Gerald Mearshart, he just somehow figures out a way to win. I mean, he's 17 losses on the record, so it's not every single time, but 37 wins. The dude is such a workhorse, going up against De Ritter, who is an accomplished champion over there in one. So I mean, there's a lot of potential for De Ritter to make his good statement with a win over Mearshart here.
Yeah, Mearshart is definitely the middleweight Oliveira. Looking at the record, it adds up. So another thing is GM3 is my main event, but this will just be a grappling match. It's a
Oh, for
pretty
sure it
good.
will. Oh
It's a
yeah.
pretty good one.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
just going to be who can do it better. But to Anakin's point here, is not only a champion but a double champ over there. So I mean, the guy obviously is pretty skilled in that department. Perhaps
Uh,
Mearshart will want to strike with him. That'd be an interesting turn of fate there.
I think bringing up the double champ. I think that's more of like the skill. Okay, yes, if you have the skill to be a champion in one division, I think the skill should be there for a different division. I think it's more of I want to say professionalism, but also like mastery of the weight cut. Like, I don't think that's more of a skill thing to get double champ status. I think it's more of mastering the weight cut more than.
I mean, to an extent, I'll give you some of that, but I mean, there are more factors than that. I would say. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. That yeah, obviously the proficiency is the defining factor, but being able to do that against bigger guys, I mean, because you're also got to think about the different builds that you get in the different weight classes as well. So I mean, if he was dropping down, then maybe there's a little bit more of a case there. But I honestly don't know which divisions he was a champ of.
Yeah,
But either way, the point is that obviously that proficiency certainly is there if he was able to do that. So he's going up against Gerald Mearshart, who has been around for a long time, but is someone who can lose. 17 times he's done that. So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with that guy. I mean, this is certainly one to keep an eye on, especially for all of the factors that we just laid out. Coming in from another organization, something to watch out for. Definitely something to make a an Apex card interesting.
yeah, 100%.
Luana Pinheiro versus Jillian Robertson. I know that my boy Vitz King is a huge Jillian Robertson fan, so rooting for her on that one. You got anything to say about that?
Why wasn't she on the Canada card?
That's a good point. Yeah.
1 week out, like that's pretty stupid. Doesn't really
Yeah, had
doesn't
to
add up.
had to switch it up a little bit, I guess. But speaking of other countries' representation here, we got Aziliu Zaleski dos Santos going up against our buddy Nicholas Dalby out of Denmark. Shout out to the homie Bloomis.
Yeah, he's gonna win.
He's got to win, man. I mean, he needs a win after the last fight. Just like it was one of those situations because the last fight was the fucker.
It was right. Yep, Reinhardt.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, look, that was a close fight. I don't necessarily think it was a robbery, but like it was close. It was definitely a fight that showed that Dalby has what it takes to hang. And I think that that there's bigger things coming for Nicholas Dalby. So I really want to see him get the job done here. I want to see him get this dub for sure.
Yeah, Anakin made a great point. The Caio and Ribeiro slot, two Brazilians that nobody wanted to see fight that didn't even fight each other. Yeah, that could have been Jillian Roberts probably.
For sure. Yeah, good point there. All right, moving on is Mansour Abdul Malik. This is the dude who just wrecked on the Contender Series, if I'm not mistaken. So I remember the name and thought that he looked really, really good on the Contender Series. So he's getting a pretty quick.
Oh, he knocked out the white dude with long hair, the dude that I questioned why is this guy even on the Contender Series? Because
Yeah,
he
but
looked
I mean,
really bad. But
fair, but I mean, dominant, on his side of the equation. So I mean, going up against Dusko Todorovic, I mean, that's a good matchup for him to start off in the promotion. So
if you go a little bit further down the card, you will see Cortavius Romius. He was
oh,
also on
yes,
Contender Series.
indeed.
Yep.
Cortavius. All right on. A lot of Contender Series guys making their debut over here. I like to see that.
Yeah, so that'll be good. And then the first fight of the night also, what was it? Antonio Tricoli. That
Oh,
Void monster.
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess his recent arrest didn't do anything to deter him from being able to fight. So congratulations for that. Going up against Trayshawn Gore, guy off the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, I was gonna say, looking at his record, this is kind of That's a record that you would see on the Contender Series, not somebody who's already had 3 fights in the UFC. What did he join at? 2-1? Like
Are you talking about
Trayshawn?
Trayshawn Gore? Yeah, I mean, something like that.
Like, what? That's kinda crazy to think about. And then he
Yeah.
came from Alabama Fighting Championship? What? This is a crazy story.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that I think has potential down the road, but still is finding his footing, but it's about time that he finds the footing already. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? It's one of those situations. It's like he's not bad, but he's not great, and he needs to start getting better if he's going to hang with the big boys. Because I actually had him. I was rooting for Brian Battle, but I thought that Trayshawn had potential to win that fight, and that did not work out for him. So
mhm.
and then a loss to Cody Brundage never ages well. So,
Right, right. Yeah.
other than that, on here, you got Semi the Jedi going up against Charles Radke, who you might remember as
Drop the F-bomb.
the outspoken gentleman from well, not from Australia, but had a lot to say in Australia. So that at least has some potential to be interesting. Damon Blackshear coming back, hopefully able to get himself back in the win column after taking those back-to-back fights where he won the first one, took a short notice fight, did not win that one. So going up against Cody Stamann, who I know has a good amount of fans, I guess. We've talked about Stamann in the past, but I was not impressed with his last performance, so I'd like to see something good out of Damon Blackshear in this one.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, I guess that's pretty much about all that I would want to talk about here. Although, actually, Melissa Mullins, I would just say that she looked really good in the first fight that I saw. Excuse me, that I saw her in, which was this win over Alex Siva. I thought that she looked really good in that fight. Then she got knocked out by Cornell there. So I mean, she needs to bounce back off of that, but I think she still has potential to be pretty good. So she's going up against Claudia Sigula, who I this might be her debut. I've never heard of her before.
Mhm.
So if Mullins can put the pieces back together, then hopefully this will be a solid win
Oh,
for her.
that's that Swedish, she's
Polish.
is oh, okay. I coulda swore I remember the tagline saying Swedish or something, but either way.
Maybe she's Swedish and fighting out of Poland. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, that's probably accurate, but yeah, I don't know who she is, but yeah, debut. Looks
So
nice.
yeah,
Mm,
always the curse of the no picture. So we'll see if
yeah.
she can actually get some, get something going for herself there. But I think Mullins, I liked her in her first fight. Is I guess what I'm trying to get at there.
Yeah, 100%.
That's so yeah. So that's all I got for this one. You got anything else that you wanted to go over on this upcoming card?
No, that's about it, I'm just ready to watch it already.
I know, man. We go from one card and we're already ready to go on to the next one. And of course, everybody, you know that you can watch along with us individually, myself right here on this channel at Yama Show. And Chase Parton, I know that you can tell everybody where they can find you for your watch along.
They can find me on youtube.com/@CPSmalls. And if sometimes you want to hear me say funny stuff on Twitter, I will be there on at Creative Parton, Partin.
Make sure you follow my boy. I am at Yama Show on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you follow that Instagram. That's where I do a good amount of my work. And you will be able to find out when we start this show on those social media platforms. So make sure you're followed along there. There is a new video out on my channel currently about UFC 308 that everybody has seemed to be enjoying. So if you want to go check that out, make sure you watch and like it if you like it, dislike it if you don't. And we will come back next Monday to talk about all of the fights on this upcoming fight night. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's about it, everybody. Until next time, have a good rest of your week. We'll see you on fight day, and of course, most importantly, fight on.
Game.